Welcome, dear friend, to yet another shared expedition. This evening, we'll delve into ageless insights that have steered countless individuals towards peace and clarity throughout the ages. I encourage you to share where you are tuning in from and the current time in your location. Tonight, I will present a thoughtfully curated collection of Zen tales. On the outside, they may appear simple, but they hold profound truths that can alter how you engage with anxiety, anger, and the relentless hunger of desire. These aren't merely bedtime stories. They are sacred whispers from enlightened souls, masters who unearth profound realizations that often get overlooked. True serenity doesn't stem from altering the world, but from transforming our responses to it. There's a Zen saying that states, when the mind is tranquil, the universe yields. As you immerse yourself in these narratives, you may start to feel the grip of worry loosen. The clamor of your inner thoughts might begin to fade. A natural calmness may arise, effortless yet impactful. These teachings have traversed through the ages, shared in hushed tones, within softly illuminated rooms, and in the quiet spaces between breaths. Each story acts as a lantern, illuminating the darker areas of your inner landscape. Some may gently dissolve long-held patterns, while others will leave you with questions far more significant than their answers. All of them will beckon you back to the pure essence of simply being in the present moment. So make yourself comfortable. Allow your body to be fully supported. Take a deliberate, deep breath. And as you exhale, recognize that what awaits you isn't coincidental. These narratives have been patiently awaiting your presence. Let us now embark on a tale that explores the distinction between merely seeing and truly experiencing. This is the story of the blind calligrapher residing in the heights of Mount Furano. Perched atop the cloud-kissed slopes of Mount Furano, an ancient temple stood, its aged wooden beams cradling centuries of prayers and contemplative moments. Within this hallowed space lived a monk named Kengyo, who had been devoid of sight since birth. Yet, despite his inability to perceive a single character, brushstroke, or panoramic view, Kengyo attained widespread fame for his magnificent calligraphy. His name spread like ripples in still water, attracting students from far-flung regions who undertook lengthy journeys to witness what many deemed unattainable. These travelers would sit in astonished silence as Kengyo's brush glided over rice paper with grace. Each stroke emerged from a profound source of insight that seemed to flow seamlessly through his hand. The characters he formed exuded an essence that transcended mere technique. They seemed to pulsate with life, embodying the very spirit of what they symbolized. One crisp autumn afternoon, a renowned calligraphy master named Hayashi visited the temple, his doubt sharper than the cool mountain breeze. He had heard the legends, naturally, but found them almost impossible to accept. How could a blind individual create such captivating characters? He questioned the other monks, his voice slicing through the temple's tranquil surroundings. This goes against all logic. Show me this so-called phenomenon. When summoned, Kengyo entered with the gentle poise that characterized all his actions. He meticulously prepared his inkstone, grinding the black stick in slow, contemplative circles until the liquid reached the perfect blend. He selected his brush, checking its flexibility against his palm. Instead of immediately starting to write, however, he extended the brush toward his guest. "Esteemed master," Kenjio spoke with a deep bow. "Might you please compose the character for Mountain?" Hayashi took the brush with practiced confidence. His strokes were bold and assured, the outcome of years of rigorous training and countless hours of dedication. The character formed on the paper was technically flawless, perfectly balanced and visually appealing by any conventional measure. Kenjio traced the dried ink with his fingers, perceiving the character as others might read a text. A subtle smile danced on his lips. "I can sense that you write as one who has gazed upon many mountains," he remarked gently. "Your strokes reflect remarkable technical prowess. But tell me, Venerable Master, have you ever been a mountain?" The inquiry lingered in the air like incense wafting through a serene space. Hayashi grimaced, confused by what appeared to be nonsense. "What do you mean? How could a person embody a mountain?" Taking back the brush, Kenjio positioned his fingers around the bamboo handle instinctively. "When I inscribe mountain," he shared, his voice soft yet imbued with quiet assurance, "I do not observe its outline with my eyes. Rather, I become its stillness, the profound silence at the core of stone. I feel its immense weight bearing down through innumerable layers of earth, its roots reaching down toward the molten center of the planet. I sense its peak reaching toward the boundless heavens where clouds gather and winds are born." As he spoke, Kenjio's brush touched the paper. Hayashi watched, entranced, as the character began to take form. But this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The strokes seemed to emerge from the paper itself, as if the mountain were pushing through the white surface. Each line carried substance and gravity. Every curve hinted at vast geological epochs. The finished character appeared to possess tangible depth, roots that disappeared into the fibers of the paper, and a peak that soared beyond the physical limitations of the page. "The character writes itself," Kenjio concluded, placing down his brush. "I am merely the mountain's temporary hand." The Buddha once proclaimed, "Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth." The profound lesson here reminds us that true mastery arises not from amassing knowledge, but from dissolving the separations between ourselves and direct experience. Why do we frequently grapple with the divide between knowing about something and genuinely knowing it? Zen Buddhism reveals that our minds create barriers that hinder authentic understanding. The distinction between experience and awareness create a fundamental separation between the observer and the observed, the one who feels and what is felt. This binary perspective serves as a barrier to true comprehension. We gather facts, delve into methodologies, and memorize details, yet we remain detached from the living essence of what we seek to understand. Reflect on how this tendency appears in your everyday existence. You may know numerous facts about love, its biological elements, psychological impacts, and social roles, but still find yourself puzzled when confronted with the emotions of your own heart. You could spend years studying meditation, grasping techniques for breath control and proper posture, while overlooking the mere act of breathing itself. You might dissect theories of leadership and management, missing the innate authority that comes from authentic care and presence. The sightless calligrapher embodies what Zen refers to as the beginner's mind, a quality of fresh, unfiltered engagement that is untainted by preconceived notions. Because Kenjio had never gazed upon mountains, He was not confined by visual recollections or artistic norms. His blindness opened a gateway to a more profound understanding, one that transcended analytical thought and connected with the mountain's fundamental essence. Zen master Dogen taught, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self." This act of forgetting is not a loss, but rather a profound unlocking. When Kenjia wrote, there was no distinct self attempting to imitate a mountain's character. The boundaries faded, allowing the essence of the mountain to flow through his hand. This lesson invites us to scrutinize our own connections with mastery and comprehension. Are you striving to intellectualize your life, or are you open to embodying your existence? When you walk, can you become the act of walking? When you listen to music, can you dissolve into sheer listening? When faced with a challenge, can you personify the solution instead of merely contemplating it? The Master Hayashi signifies our typical route to skill mastery. Amassing techniques, honing form, and developing expertise through repetition and scrutiny. While this path holds its merits, it can subtly ensnare us if it keeps us on the periphery of experience, admiring our own proficiency instead of surrendering to the profound currents of creative expression. Authentic mastery frequently entails a paradoxical release of what we presume to know. The adept surgeon whose hands navigate with intuitive finesse beyond conscious thought. The musician who melds into the music, allowing it to unfold on its own. The parent who instinctively caters to their child's needs with love's intrinsic wisdom rather than parenting guidelines. This evening, as you engage with whatever activity beckons you, might you explore Kuro's method? Instead of attempting to excel, can you let yourself become what desires to be expressed? Can you write as if you are the words, walk as if you're the path, and love as if you're love itself? As the Buddha taught, upon realizing the perfection in everything, you shall tilt your head back and laugh at the sky. That perfection resides not in our skill, but in our readiness to dissolve into the reality of each moment, allowing life to express itself through us with the natural artistry that emerges when the small self recedes. Our forthcoming tale unveils a profound insight regarding the nature of distraction and inner tranquility. This is the story of the temple cat's lesson. At Shinji Temple, nestled amidst a grove of ancient cedar trees, where the morning mist lingered like visible prayers, the daily rhythm of monastic existence flowed with the dependable regularity of the changing seasons. Monks rose before dawn, engaging in their morning chants, tending to the temple gardens, and assembling twice daily for seated meditation in the main hall. This serene routine had persisted unchanged for generations, fostering an ambience of profound tranquility that visitors sensed the moment they crossed the temple's threshold. Yet, this peace was regularly disrupted by a single, quite rotund tabby cat named Tama. She had arrived at the temple several years back as a kitten, and the monks, upholding their practice of compassion towards all beings, welcomed her into their community. However, Tama developed what could best be described as a unique and persistent quirk. Whenever the monks assumed their meditation posture in the main hall, arranging their robes and calming their minds for the sacred practice of zazen, Tama would make her entrance. It seemed as though she had an uncanny knack for sensing the precise moment inner stillness began to manifest. At that exact moment, she would silently pad into the hall and commence her rounds. Sometimes she would wander through the seated monks, her tail brushing against their faces. Other times, she would leap onto a lap, settling her considerable weight onto legs that had grown numb from stillness. She particularly delighted in knocking over the small wooden bowls of water placed next to each meditation cushion, sending droplets splattering across the polished floors. On especially disruptive days, she would swat at the hanging bell near the altar, causing it to chime at random intervals. The head monk, Eisen, found his patience eroding as each meditation session transformed into an exercise in managing irritation rather than nurturing peace. His jaw would clench in annoyance upon hearing Tama's paws touch the wooden floor. His breathing would become strained when yet another water bowl toppled over. The very sight of the cat approaching the meditation hall would trigger waves of frustration in his carefully maintained demeanor. Eventually, Eisen could hold back his vexation no longer. He approached the abbot, an elderly man named Soren, whose weathered visage radiated the deep serenity of decades immersed in contemplative practice. "Venerable teacher," Eisen said, bowing deeply, "this cat renders proper meditation unattainable. Every session transforms into a circus of distraction. We must, the peaceful cat in the temple, remove her from the hall if we are to uphold the sacred atmosphere essential for our practice." Abbot Soren listened carefully, as he always did to matters both trivial and significant. Once Eisen concluded his remarks, the old teacher smiled gently, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "Tomorrow morning," he said softly, "let us conduct an experiment. Instead of resisting Tama's interruptions, instruct each monk to simply continue their meditation, regardless of her actions. Encourage them to regard her behavior as any other occurrence during meditation, with awareness, yet without resistance." As the first light of dawn beckoned the day, the morning gong echoed, signaling the start of meditation. Eisen conveyed the abbot's guidance to the assembled monks. While some displayed skepticism and others appeared resigned, they all found their sitting postures with a refreshed focus. They chose to greet each moment with presence, rather than reactivity. It was as if an unseen cue had called to her, for there stood Tama at the entrance of the hall. She commenced her usual antics, weaving in and out among the seated figures, tiptoeing past water bowls, and navigating her well-known domain of disruption. Yet, something extraordinary unfolded. Upon knocking over the first bowl, the monk it affected simply inhaled steadily, his form resolutely unchanged. When she settled on another monk's lap, he stayed utterly still, neither welcoming her nor shunning her presence. Tama paused, appearing confused by the lack of response. She battered at the hem of a robe, eliciting no reply. Another bowl toppled over, but the monk kept his eyes closed. Even when she managed to make the small altar bell chime, the monks remained untouched, their attention enveloped in the vastness of stillness, which embraced all sounds. After about 10 minutes, a remarkable thing happened. Tama strolled over to a corner of the hall, circled 3 times, and curled into a nap. For the rest of the meditation session, the gentle rhythm of her purring filled the air, adding depth to the enveloping silence rather than disturbing it. Once the period concluded, Abbot Soren gathered the monks close. "You see," he illuminated, his eyes sparkling with quiet delight, "Tama was never the distraction. Your responses to her were. She merely existed as a cat, embodying her essence, exploring her surroundings, living in the present. Once you embraced being simply monks, accepting whatever arose without resistance, there was nothing left for her to disrupt. From that moment forward, Tama was affectionately dubbed the most tranquil temple cat in the entire region. Despite her behavior remaining unchanged, Buddha's insight rings true. You will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. This timeless wisdom reveals the core of Tama's teaching, that suffering stems not from external situations but from our resistance to them. How often do we attribute our inner turmoil to outside influences? The boisterous neighbor interrupting our peace, the sluggish driver igniting our impatience, the wailing infant on the airplane that shatters our tranquility, the overbearing boss robbing us of our calm. Much like the monks before their awakening, we point to external distractions as the root of our discomfort, overlooking the profound reality that it is our resistance that breeds the problem. Zen Buddhism imparts that genuine peace is not the absence of disturbance but the presence of equanimity amid whatever arises. The Sanskrit term for this quality is sama, meaning equal or balanced. It characterizes a mind that remains steady in the face of pleasure or pain, approval or criticism, achievement or failure. This steadiness is not about indifference or numbness. It embodies a vibrant, aware responsiveness that evades the perpetual loop of attraction and aversion. Reflect on your own habits of reactivity. Notice how your peace hinges on external conditions aligning with your desires. You feel serene when your environment is calm but unsettled when it becomes noisy. You find tranquility when others act in ways you expect but frustration when they diverge from those expectations. You savor calmness when your schedule flows seamlessly but experience stress with unexpected interruptions. This conditional peace is inherently delicate because it relies on managing circumstances that often lie beyond our control. The world will not reshape itself to fit our preferences. Cats will persist in being cats. People will remain people. Life will continuously present us with a plethora of experiences, many of which will not align with our ideals for how things ought to be. True liberation emerges from uncovering what Zen refers to as our original nature, a fundamental awareness that remains unperturbed regardless of what arises within it. Just as the sky is untouched by the clouds that drift through it, this core consciousness is not harmed by the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that surface and dissolve within it. Thich Nhat Hanh taught, thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. The very truth that all experiences are transient, including our reactions to them, opens up space for a new relationship with adversity. When we genuinely grasp that this too shall pass, we can better approach difficult moments with expanded mindfulness. The monks' transformation occurred when they ceased attempting to create perfect conditions for peace and began learning to discover peace within imperfect circumstances. This transition from trying to control to embracing, from resisting to permitting, paves the way for a stability that external conditions cannot dislodge. This doesn't equate to passivity or neglecting to take necessary actions when warranted. If Tama had engaged in genuinely destructive behavior instead of merely being disruptive, appropriate measures would have been called for. The wisdom lies in differentiating between situations requiring external change and those that demand internal acceptance. Tonight, as you observe the various cats in your life, the small irritations, unexpected disruptions, and minor annoyances, remember Tama's lesson. The merchant's remarkable delivery. In a lively market district nestled within a prosperous mountain town, where the sounds of currency and conversation danced through the air from dawn until dusk, a rice trader named Ichiro thrived. Known for his unwavering reliability, he delivered his grain exactly as promised, come rain or shine, regardless of challenges. His integrity was his greatest asset, built over many years of honest dealings, and it formed the foundation of his success. One brisk spring morning, Ichiro received a frantic request from a village perched high in the mountains. The message was laced with urgency. Their winter supplies had dwindled perilously due to an unanticipated late frost that devastated their food stores. They urgently needed rice and were prepared to pay a premium for swift delivery. For Ichiro, this wasn't just an opportunity for profit, it was a chance to assist those in dire need. He loaded his most resilient mules with top-quality rice from his store and set off before first light, aiming to reach the village in 2 days. The mountain trail was perilous but known. He had traversed it countless times. However, he was unprepared for the alarming news from fellow travelers. The main route was being commandeered by a group of desperate men resorting to robbery as their own villages faced famine. As Ichiro neared the narrow mountain pass where the outlaws were reportedly waiting, his mind churned with impossible scenarios. If he turned back, the rice would spoil well before he could find an alternative route. The weather was warming, and grain didn't fare well in heat. The village would face starvation, and his name would be tarnished. Fighting was not a viable option. He was but a single man facing several armed adversaries, equipped only with a small knife intended for cutting rope. In a moment of desperation, Ichiro made a choice, one that took him by surprise. He pivoted his mules and rode back to the closest town, where he sought out the local Zen master, Sengai, known for his insightful wisdom and unconventional solutions to seemingly insurmountable dilemmas. "Master," Ichiro said, bowing respectfully at the simple wooden dwelling of Sengai, "I am confronted with a dilemma that has no favorable outcome. I must deliver rice to a village beyond the mountain pass, yet bandits control the road. I cannot take an alternate route, as my rice will spoil in the rising temperatures. Confrontation is not an option, as I am utterly alone. Failure means starvation for many and ruin for my livelihood. What shall I do?" Sengai listened intently, as he did with all matters, large and small. He remained silent for several long moments, his aged hands resting calmly in his lap, his gaze reflecting a depth beyond the immediate concern. Finally, he looked up, his eyes glinting with an unexpected playfulness. "Go to the pass at dawn tomorrow," he instructed. "When you meet the bandits, bow respectfully and present them with half of your rice as a gift for their hungry families." Ichiro felt a wave of despair wash over him. "But master," he urged, anxiety constricting his voice, "if I offer them half of my cargo, I won't have sufficient rice to fulfill my commitment to the village. They have already compensated me and rely on the full quantity to survive until their next harvest. I will be financially ruined, and hunger will still afflict many." Sengai's demeanor remained composed. "Trust in this," he replied, carrying the calm assurance of one who had navigated many seemingly impossible predicaments. Although every practical instinct within him rebelled against such advice, Ichiro had heard enough tales of Sengai's wisdom to set aside his logical objections. With a heart heavy with skepticism, he returned to his mules that night near the pass, spending the hours wrestling with the enigmatic guidance of the master. At dawn, under the gentle embrace of morning mist draping the mountains, Ichiro approached the narrow defile where the path wedged between towering cliffs. As expected, 3 rough-looking men emerged from behind rocks obstructing his way. The threadbare clothes they wore draped over gaunt frames, their hunger evident in their emaciated faces, yet their eyes were hard, forged from desperation. Before they could issue threats or demands, Ichiro dismounted from his leading mule and bowed deeply. "Good morning, friends," he greeted, his voice unwavering despite his pounding heart. "I am bringing rice to the village beyond this pass. Would you accept half of my load as a gift for your families?" The 3 men exchanged bewildered glances. This was far from the routine such encounters typically followed. The leader, a man with streaks of gray in his hair and keen eyes, stepped forward, suspicion written across his features. "What kind of trick is this?" he challenged, instinctively reaching for the knife at his waist. "Merchants don't offer gifts to bandits. What's your true intention?" "No trick whatsoever," Ichiro responded, looking the man directly in the eye with genuine sincerity. "I merely thought you and your families might be hungry. If you're blocking this road, I assume you have a sound reason." A lengthy silence settled between them, occasionally pierced by the whispers of the wind. The story of generosity and understanding. Through the rugged mountain ridges, 3 men traded looks, sharing unspoken thoughts among themselves. Gradually, the leader's slight wariness lessened, replaced by what seemed like awe. "You may be the bravest person I've encountered," he remarked thoughtfully, "or perhaps the most reckless." To everyone's surprise, he erupted into laughter, not cruelly, but with genuine mirth and what appeared to be relief. "All right, stranger, we will assist you in carrying half your rice. However," he added, "there's a twist that makes this situation quite intriguing." As the quartet collaborated to move half of Ichiro's cargo to the bandits' simple packs, the leader elaborated on the matter. "The village you're headed to, those are our families, our wives, children, aging parents. We've been trying to get food to them for weeks, but we lack the funds to buy supplies." He gestured hopelessly at their makeshift block. "We became what we never imagined we'd become." A realization hit Ichiro like the dawn illuminating the mountains. He not only would fulfill his delivery, but also these men would guarantee the rice arrived at the village safely. Upon reaching his destination, he was compensated not just with the originally agreed amount by the thankful villagers, but he also received an extra sum from the former bandits for reuniting them with their families and helping them restore their dignity. As the Buddha noted, generosity brings joy at every level of its expression. From this narrative, a significant lesson unfolds regarding the creative potential of giving in scenarios that seem to require taking or withhold. Why do we instinctively cling to what little we have in times of scarcity? Zen Buddhism highlights a core misconception about the essence of abundance and security. Our conditioned minds function from a place known as scarcity thinking, a belief that there is never enough, that we must safeguard what we possess, and that another's gain inevitably means our loss. This outlook cultivates the very limitations it fears. Contemplate how this tendency appears in your daily life. When you feel time-crunched, you tend to guard your attention, speeding through interactions and missing chances for meaningful connection. When anxious about finances, you may withhold generosity, which could inherently open new routes for prosperity. When anxious about criticism, you may stifle authentic expression that might invite the acceptance you yearn for. The Merchant's Tale illustrates the impact of acting from abundance rather than from scarcity. Despite circumstances suggesting caution, Ichiro's decision to part with half of his rice stemmed not from blind optimism but from a faith in a deeper principle. Authentic generosity fosters unexpected relationships and uncovers hidden opportunities. Zen instructor Suzuki Roshi remarked, "Each of you is just right as you are, and there's always room for improvement." This paradox pertains to our resources too. We eternally possess enough for genuinely important tasks, and we can constantly discover ways to share more than we imagined feasible. The bandits in this narrative symbolize the aspects of ourselves and others that adopt taking strategies when giving seems impossible. When desperate for attention, security, acknowledgement, or affection, we may turn into emotional bandits, trying to extract from others what we mistakenly think we lack. However, like the hungry men halting passage through the mountain, these strategies frequently alienate us from what we truly seek. Observe how the merchant's mindset shifted the entire situation by offering what the bandits intended to seize. He dismantled the illusory wall between giver and receiver, with the bandits transforming into allies. The seemingly impossible delivery became ensured, and the needs of everyone were satisfied more completely than anyone could have envisioned. This does not imply being naive to real threats or indiscriminately giving away resources crucial for survival. Wisdom encompasses the discernment regarding when and how to show generosity, but it does hint that our initial urge to protect and withhold may blind us to creative possibilities that become apparent only when we approach with openness. The Buddha taught that countless candles could be lit from a single candle without reducing its lifespan. Happiness does not diminish when shared. Authentic abundance operates with a different mathematics than scarcity. When we share our attention, it multiplies. When we extend kindness, it returns amplified. When we offer trust, it fosters trustworthiness. As you contemplate the daunting deliveries in your life tonight, the instances when you feel torn between competing priorities, where resources seem insufficient for what is necessary, ask yourself what gift might shift the dynamic. Instead of fixating on your shortages, consider what you might be able to extend. Rather than safeguarding what you have, think of how you could disperse it in a manner that generates new possibilities. As the Buddha stated, offer even if your resources are modest. Occasionally, the slightest offering made with heartfelt intention opens pathways that all our clever strategies could never unlock. Now, let's explore a tale that highlights the paradox of ignorance and true wisdom. This is the account of the student who neglected to learn. At the revered Daikoja monastery, situated on a hillside where ancient pines shared secrets with the breeze, the daily rhythms of learning and practice had persisted unchanged for centuries. Eager young monks arrived, hungry to grasp the profound teachings of Zen Buddhism. Their minds yearned for the insight that would lead them toward enlightenment. They committed sutras to memory with diligence, debated philosophical concepts with zeal, and quietly vied to display their growing knowledge to their mentors. Among these dedicated students was a young man named Moan, whose presence had become somewhat of a mystery to everyone at the monastery. As his peers advanced in their studies, the beauty of not knowing. In the realm of tangible achievements, where others swiftly memorize intricate teachings within mere weeks and grasp the nuanced meanings of Zen within months, Moan appeared to be enveloped in a cloud of confusion. After 3 grueling years of training, he still grappled with concepts that newcomers commonly mastered within their first month. Prompted to recite fundamental sutras, he would falter over phrases he had encountered countless times. Presented with straightforward koans designed to spark understanding, he often sat in dumbfounded silence, seemingly unable to access even their most apparent layers of significance. His notebooks remained largely unfilled, not due to a lack of effort, but rather because he genuinely struggled to grasp the very foundations that others found simple. Initially, his fellow students expressed sympathy towards his plight, but this soon morphed into hushed whispers filled with a blend of pity and frustration. How can someone be so unimaginably dense? They would quietly lament over their evening meals. He's been here longer than anyone else, yet he knows less than the latest arrival. Perhaps he simply lacks the intellect for this path. Some suggested in private conversations that Moan should consider leaving the monastery to pursue a simpler life more in line with his perceived limitations. His presence seemed to hinder the serious endeavor of spiritual education, and his vacant expressions during lectures cast an uncomfortable shadow over the room where eager students sought enlightenment. Nevertheless, the teaching master displayed unwavering patience with Moan's apparent mental slowness. There was something in his earnest dedication, his regular attendance, and his humble acceptance of his struggles that made the teacher reluctant to abandon him. Perhaps the master believed that some students merely needed more time to mature into understanding. One afternoon, during a particularly advanced lecture delving into the profound concept of Buddha mind, the fundamental awareness that Zen teachings describe as our true nature, the master set out to clarify the subtle nuances between mundane consciousness and enlightened awareness. These concepts were intricate, involving paradoxes that challenged even the keenest minds. As the master expounded upon the elusive nature of mind itself, illustrating how it cannot be grasped or pinpointed yet is inseparably present in each moment, the atmosphere thickened with the focused concentration of students striving to comprehend. Some scribbled furiously in their notebooks, while others appeared deep in thought, wrestling with the philosophical implications. Yet, amidst this whirlwind of intellectual engagement, Moan slowly raised his hand, an unusual act likely stemming from embarrassment over his habitual confusion. The room fell silent, with all eyes shifting toward him, bracing for yet another display of misunderstanding. "Master," Moan began, his voice echoing with sincerity, "I must admit that I don't grasp what Buddha mind is meant to embody, despite your persistent efforts to elucidate. However, I've observed something peculiar over these past 3 years. When I search for my own mind, the thing everyone speaks about, I cannot seem to find it anywhere at all. I've looked everywhere, yet it never makes an appearance. Is there a significant flaw in my practice?" The room grew so quiet that the sound of wind rustling through the pine trees outside seemed deafening. The master gazed at Moan for what felt like an eternity, his expression transitioning through phases of surprise, understanding, and ultimately, sheer joy. Suddenly, without warning, the master erupted into laughter, not the polite chuckle customary in social interactions, but deep, infectious laughter that emanated from a profound source of delight. The other students exchanged perplexed glances, uncertain whether this was yet another instance of Moan's frustrating confusion or something entirely different. "You brilliant fool," the master exclaimed, his eyes twinkling with tears of laughter. "You've been enlightened for 3 years, yet you're too wonderfully simple to realize it. While everyone else has been busy filling their minds with concepts about awakeness, you've been directly experiencing the very essence of what they're theorizing about." Turning to address the other students, his voice resonated with excitement. What Moan has discovered through his beautiful simplicity is the direct recognition that mind cannot be objectified because you are, indeed, mind itself. He has been living in the very awareness that all our words and concepts can only ever point toward. The other students sat in stunned silence as the implications began to settle in. While they had been accumulating knowledge about enlightenment, debating theories regarding Buddha nature, and striving to achieve some special state of comprehension, Moan had inadvertently stumbled into the immediate recognition of what they were all yearning for. He became the first student in the monastery's long history to receive Dharma transmission, the formal acknowledgement of enlightenment, without even realizing what it was. Ancient Buddhist wisdom reflects, in the beginner's mind, there are countless possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Herein lies one of Zen's most profound paradoxes, that a lack of knowledge may serve as a more direct pathway to truth than the relentless acquisition of information. Why do we presume that understanding necessitates inundating ourselves with facts? Our educational systems teach us that ignorance is an issue that must be resolved through the accumulation of facts, concepts, and theoretical frameworks. While this approach is beneficial in many practical realms, it can subtly obstruct our capacity to directly recognize our true nature. Reflect on how this pattern manifests in your own spiritual search. You might find yourself reading countless texts, accumulating knowledge, and engaging in discussions that seemingly take you further away from the very realization you seek. The art of acceptance. In our modern lives, countless resources about meditation often fail to lead us into simple awareness. We might delve into numerous happiness philosophies while missing the satisfaction that exists in this very moment. One might analyze tips on relationships endlessly while neglecting the love that naturally arises when we stop overthinking. Zen Master Hangpa offered wisdom when he said, "The foolish dismiss what they see, not what they think. The wise disregard what they think, not what they see." Mind's apparent foolishness was, in reality, a deep-seated wisdom. He placed his trust in his lived experience over abstract concepts. When he couldn't locate his mind amidst all the theories, he candidly shared his struggles instead of posturing as if he understood something he had not truly perceived. The other learners illustrate our typical approach to acquiring knowledge, accumulating facts, evaluating ourselves against others, and striving for something we believe we lack. This comparative mindset inevitably leads to suffering, as it presupposes that enlightenment is something to be attained, rather than something already available to be acknowledged. What allowed Mohn's breakthrough was his lack of spiritual ambition. He wasn't attempting to achieve enlightenment, demonstrate his knowledge, or impress others with his insights. His inability to grasp intricate concepts created the space necessary for genuine experience to surface. This lesson does not promote intellectual apathy nor demean the importance of learning. Instead, it highlights the distinction between knowledge that enhances our connection to reality and knowledge that distances us from it. The former fosters awakening, while the latter might serve as a substitute for true realization. Reflect on your own experience. Does the incessant chatter of your mind obscure your connection to basic presence? While viewing a sunset, are you truly absorbing the colors and light, or are you merely pondering sunsets? In the company of a loved one, are you engaged with them or scrutinizing the relationship? While sitting in stillness, are you attuned to the silence or simply thinking about meditation? The Buddha once stated, "It is better to journey well than to reach the destination." Mohn was traversing the path effectively without realizing he had indeed arrived. His readiness to embrace uncertainty, to continue searching without the need to find immediate answers, and to maintain curiosity without settling on conclusions fostered the openness that embodies enlightenment itself. Contemporary spiritual pursuits often mirror the approach of the other students, striving harder, studying more, implementing complicated practices, and measuring progress against imagined benchmarks. Yet, what if the very pursuit of transforming into someone else, even a more enlightened being, is diverting you away from recognizing who you already are? This evening, as you reflect on whatever queries occupy your thoughts, can you cherish Mohn's ability to remain in not knowing? Rather than exerting effort to decipher everything, could you repose in the mystery of your immediate experience? Can you perceive what exists when you're not grappling to comprehend, improve, or resolve it? As the Buddha advised, do not accept anything solely because you have heard it. Instead, after observation and assessment, once you find that something aligns with reason and benefits all, then embrace it and live according to it. The most profound truths often emerge not through complex reasoning, but through the willingness to notice what genuinely exists beyond our preconceptions of what ought to be present. As we navigate through the insights of Zen Buddhism, let us delve into a narrative depicting the unexpected lessons derived from complete authenticity. This is the tale of an innkeeper in Zen. At a bustling intersection where mountain routes converged from all sides, there was a humble inn catering to travelers journeying between far-off villages. Its strategic location meant that no one could avoid passing by it en route through the area. Yet the inn's reputation was complicated by its owner's infamous temperament. Fujiwara, the innkeeper, had gained notoriety across the region for his exceptionally unpleasant demeanor. He seemed to take personal offense at the very presence of his guests, greeting latecomers with an avalanche of curses and complaints. If someone dared to knock at his door after what he deemed a reasonable hour, he would fling it open, immediately beginning to rail against inconsiderate travelers who exhibited no regard for hard-working innkeepers. Should guests rise early and disturb his morning routine, he would chastise them for being noisy and disrupting the tranquility of his establishment. Despite the steady stream of passageways, which left travelers with no choice but to stay at his inn, Fujiwara somehow managed to make virtually every visitor's experience unpleasant. He would slam their meals down with visible resentment, mutter under his breath about the challenge of satisfying demanding guests, and generally cultivate an atmosphere of tension that left even the most fatigued travelers eager to depart at dawn's light. One stormy evening in late autumn, when the wind howled through the mountain clefts and rain battered the inn's wooden shutters, a traveling monk arrived at Fujiwara's door. Soaked to the bone, the monk's simple robes clung to his frail body, and his sandal-clad feet were caked with mud from the perilous trails. Fujiwara opened the door sporting his usual scowl, clearly displeased by the monk's bedraggled appearance. "Another one," he muttered, stepping aside begrudgingly for the monk to enter. "I suppose you expect a room along with dry clothes and a hot meal, and don't you dare track that mud into my pristine inn." The monk bowed courteously, water still dripping from his travel hat. "Thank you for offering shelter on such a treacherous night," he said with sincere appreciation, which only seemed to irk Fujiwara further. "Kindness?" Fujiwara scoffed. "This isn't about kindness, it's business. And don't count on breakfast tomorrow. I'm not operating a lesson in acceptance." Fujiwara ran a modest inn nestled in the foothills, where weary travelers seeking refuge would find shelter from tumultuous weather. One evening, a wandering monk arrived seeking a place to stay, while Fujiwara seized the opportunity to lament his troubles. He ranted incessantly about thoughtless patrons, the unrelenting storm outside, and the strenuous demands of managing and enduring foul weather. Throughout the night, the monk lay on his thin mat, absorbing the innkeeper's complaints that echoed through the wooden structure. It was as if Fujiwara were engaged in a heated debate with the storm, denouncing the wind for shaking his windows, berating the rain for pounding upon the roof, and voicing his fury at the tempest's utter disregard for his peace of mind. As dawn broke and the storm began to subside, the monk approached to settle his account. Fujiwara was still in a wretched mood, clearly having spent the night grousing about the weather. "Before I set forth on my way, I must express something," the monk stated with a respectful bow directed at the taken-aback innkeeper. "You are an extraordinary instructor, and I'm thankful for the profound lesson you imparted to me overnight." With a perplexed look, Fujiwara retorted, "Instructor? I'm merely an innkeeper. I know nothing about philosophy or whatever nonsense you monks dwell on. I simply manage this inn and attempt to cope with the never-ending nonsense of rude guests and inclement weather." The monk's face lit up with the serene joy that accompanies a cherished revelation. "As I listened to your expressions of frustration, your shouts at the storm, curses directed at the wind, and rage aimed at the rain, I uncovered a significant truth. The storm did not retaliate with anger. The wind did not argue or feel the need to defend itself, and the rain remained unaffected by your discontent. All these natural occurrences steadfastly continued their existence, oblivious to your emotional reactions." Pausing for a moment to let the monk's words resonate, he continued, "You demonstrated to me that anger is merely a fleeting distraction that passes through the human spirit. It does not alter the intrinsic nature of anything. The storm persisted as a storm. The wind continued to be wind, and the rain flowed like rain independent of your sentiments toward them. Yet, you remained genuinely yourself, an honorable man offering hospitality to wayfarers while grappling with your own vexations. Fujiwara's brow furrowed as he sought to comprehend the monk's perspective. But I was simply angry. I detest storms. I dislike being awake all night. My routines should not be disrupted. What's so special about that? Precisely, the monk replied, his eyes glimmering with understanding. Raw, unfiltered anger, devoid of pretension or philosophical overlay. You expressed what you genuinely felt at that moment, without any desire to appear wise or enlightened. That honesty is refreshingly unique. Most individuals veil their emotions with philosophical ideals or social niceties. You allowed your feelings to manifest in their pure form, just as the storm continues to unveil itself as a storm. The monk hefted his humble travel bag, preparing to embark on his journey. You have enlightened me in a manner I had never grasped before, that by wholly accepting our feelings, allowing them to be what they are without resistance or criticism, we might take the first step toward liberation from their hold on us. I appreciate your genuine lesson. Once the monk departed down the winding mountain path, Fujiwara lingered in the doorway for an extended moment, mulling over this peculiar interaction. He had always viewed his quick temper as an unfortunate flaw, a trait that rendered him disagreeable and possibly drove customers away. However, an unexpected transformation began in the weeks that followed. Astonishingly, his anger began to wane, not because he suppressed it or sought to mask it with phony congeniality, but because he reached a stage of complete acceptance. He realized that resisting his own temperament was akin to bellowing at the storm, exhausting and ultimately fruitless. Upon ceasing to combat his immediate reactions, he found that they began to morph on their own. Buddha once noted, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." The essence of this wisdom lies in distinguishing between experiencing our feelings and being confined by them. Why do we grapple so fiercely with our emotional climates? Zen Buddhism suggests that the root of the issue lies in our misinterpretation of feelings. We often believe emotions define us. Anger labels us as angry individuals. Sadness classifies us as sorrowful. This identification constructs a secondary layer of suffering as we reprimand ourselves for responding humanly to challenging situations. Think about how this cycle manifests in your daily life. When frustration emerges, you may immediately engage in an internal dialogue. "I shouldn't feel this way. It's unspiritual. If I were more evolved, I wouldn't react like this." Such resistance to your inherent feelings generates tension, often prolonging the very emotions you wish to evade. The innkeeper's story illustrates the outcome of ceasing to resist our inner storms. Fujiwara did not intend to be angry. He was simply engulfed in the emotion, expressing it authentically without the self-imposed judgment that typically accompanies unwelcome feelings. Paradoxically, this total acceptance led to a spaciousness for genuine transformation. Zen teacher Pema Chodron wisely stated, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This isn't a contradiction, but rather an acknowledgement that authentic transformation begins with radical self-acceptance. We cannot alter what we refuse to recognize, nor can we heal that which we persistently battle against. The wisdom of the monk lay in identifying that the innkeeper's authenticity was in itself a form of unknowing instruction, the path to understanding. In our society, we often conflate emotional regulation with spiritual maturity. However, genuine liberation may lie in allowing our emotions to exist fully while recognizing that we are the vast awareness in which these feelings emerge and fade away. This does not imply that we should give in to every emotional urge or utilize our feelings as justification to harm others. True wisdom involves discerning when and how to appropriately convey emotions. It implies that our initial response to challenging emotions should be one of acceptance rather than aversion. Notice how the innkeeper's frustration served as a genuine reflection of reality. He was displeased by storms, sleepless nights, and muddy floors, expressing this openly. There was no facading, no spiritual bypassing, and no effort to be someone different. This raw authenticity, although seemingly harsh, fostered a space for true transformation. The storm within the narrative symbolizes the myriad situations in our lives that clash with our desires. The tempests of work pressure, relationship troubles, health concerns, financial strains, and the myriad daily vexations that provoke our emotional reactions. Like a natural storm, these scenarios operate under their own logic and timing, independent of our feelings about them. As the Buddha taught, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. Yet, this love begins with a kind acceptance of our genuine emotions, rather than attempting to generate feelings we believe we ought to possess. The innkeeper's transformation commenced when he ceased to resent his own anger. As you reflect on whatever emotional climates prevail within your psyche tonight, perhaps irritation over slow progress, apprehension about impending challenges, or sorrow over past grief, can you explore Fujiwara's unintentional wisdom? Instead of striving to alter, enhance, or spiritualize your emotions, can you allow them to be what they are? Can you approach your own humanity with the same patience you might offer to a passing storm? The Buddha remarked, "The path is not in the sky, the journey lies within the heart." At times, the most direct approach to tranquility traverses right through the core of our tumultuous emotions rather than circumventing them. By fully embracing our inner storms, we unveil a profound stillness of awareness that remains untroubled by any weather. Now, let's delve into a tale about recognition and the wisdom that often lies right before us. This is the narrative of the traveler and the sage. Word had spread throughout the region about an extraordinary sage who possessed remarkable insight and spiritual power. People claimed he could respond to any question, resolve any trouble, and offer guidance capable of transforming even the most troubled lives. He resided, as these tales suggested, in an unassuming home atop a distant mountain, far removed from the distractions and corruptions of everyday village life. A man from the valley below struggled with a conundrum that seemed to have no resolution. He had exhausted all possible solutions, seeking counsel from friends, advice from local elders, and even consulting other teachers, but none provided the clarity or peace he yearned for. Upon learning of the sage on the mountain, he felt compelled to embark on the journey, no matter the challenges ahead. The ascent to the mountain was steep and perilous. He climbed tirelessly under the scorching sun, his feet aching, his breath short, his water dwindling, yet his resolve remained unshaken. He was confident that once he reached the summit and encountered this legendary figure, all his misfortunes would dissolve thanks to the sage's profound wisdom and spiritual clarity. After a laborious trek that left him utterly fatigued and covered in dust, he finally arrived at the simple home perched at the mountain's peak. The structure was plain and weathered, precisely as he expected for someone who had surpassed worldly concerns. He approached the door, a mix of eagerness and reverence swelling within him, ready to meet someone whose wisdom would exceed that of ordinary people. When he knocked, an elderly attendant answered the door. The man was unremarkable, dressed plainly, and exuded humility. He looked like any of the countless attendants the visitor might encounter in his village. "I seek to meet the wise sage," the traveler said, barely acknowledging the servant as he spoke, his eyes already scanning beyond the old man into the interior, keen to glimpse the extraordinary being he had traversed so far to encounter. The attendant replied with a warm smile and motioned for him to enter. "Please, come inside," he said softly, guiding the way through the humble abode. As they made their way through the house, the visitor surveyed eagerly, his heart racing with anticipation. He inspected every area they passed, on the lookout for indications of the sage presence, perhaps ceremonial garments, sacred artifacts, or an aura of transcendental serenity. The attendant continued to lead him quietly through the unadorned rooms, with practical furnishings and common household items. Before the traveler realized it, they had traversed the entire house and arrived at the back door. The servant opened it and motioned toward the trail leading back down the mountain. Suddenly, the traveler halted, confusion and disappointment washing over him. "Wait," he exclaimed, turning to confront the servant with growing frustration. "I didn't come this far just to be ushered through an empty house. I want to see the sage. Where is he?" The old servant's smile broadened, and his eyes sparkled with gentle mirth. "You have already seen him," he replied softly. "But more importantly, I have a lesson for you that can resolve the issue that brought you here today." The traveler stared back at him, bewildered. This ordinary old man could not possibly be the legendary sage he had heard about. Where was the luminous presence, the unmistakable signs of spiritual authority, to engaging with this learned baron? The following morning, the distinguished visitor arrived, and after exchanging polite greetings, he began to speak. "Master Bank," he began earnestly, "I have studied intensely, delving deeply into philosophy and spiritual texts. Yet, despite my efforts, I cannot grasp the essence of your teachings. I plead with you to illuminate this for me." Bank looked into the Baron's eyes and, sensing his heartfelt yearning for understanding, replied with a calm demeanor, "Let us engage in a simple activity to explore your understanding." He led the Baron to a nearby garden where vibrant flowers sprang forth with life. "Please, observe these flowers and describe their beauty to me." The Baron gazed at the blossoms, becoming lost in their hues and forms. After a few moments, he eloquently described their magnificence, painting vivid images with his words. Bank listened intently, nodding along. When the Baron concluded, Bank responded, "You see, the flowers hold the same profound truths that we often search for in lofty doctrines. Their beauty is evident, yet only becomes apparent through your observation." The Baron pondered this, realizing that he had become so entangled in theoretical discussions that he had neglected to truly experience the world around him. Bank continued, "In understanding the beauty of this garden, you touch the essence of wisdom. It lies not in complex theories but in the simplicity of presence. To know truth, one must embrace the ordinary moments." The Baron's heart opened as he grasped the profundity of Bank's wisdom. "I see now, Master. It isn't about accumulating knowledge but about being here, in this moment." "Yes," Bank affirmed. "Awareness is the key that unlocks the doors of understanding. You've searched the world for answers, yet they have always existed right before you, waiting for your recognition. Each flower mirrors the wisdom that permeates your life." As the day drew to a close, the Baron felt a profound shift within himself. He had come seeking an understanding that felt elusive, but instead, he found clarity in simplicity. He understood that wisdom was readily accessible if he merely shifted his focus from searching to witnessing. As dusk settled over the garden, the Baron thanked Bank profoundly for the transformative experience. With a heart full of gratitude, he made his way back to the city, determined to integrate this newfound wisdom into his life. This tale illustrates a vital aspect of spiritual awakening. Often, profound insights arise not from complex teachings but from moments of genuine connection and awareness. It beckons us to question our preconceived notions about where wisdom might be found. We frequently overlook the ordinary as a source of enlightenment, yet it is in these simple encounters that the most significant teachings are born. Remember, just as the Baron learned, wisdom is not trapped within the confines of scholarly pursuit or grand expectations. It is alive in every encounter, every moment. Let us all strive to embrace this perspective, to seek the lessons in the commonplace, for therein lies the richest understanding of our human experience. Awakening through direct experience. The dawn broke with bright sunlight illuminating the landscape, accompanied by the distant chime of bells resonating from the temple, summoning the community to stillness. Bank sat in the designated meeting space, anticipation building as the appointed hour drew near. Instead of the Baron himself, a familiar, impeccably dressed gentleman stepped into the room, his demeanor marked by a palpable sense of discomfort. "Esteemed Master," he began, his tone laden with regret, "I bear unfortunate tidings." The Baron had been called away on pressing matters that could not be postponed, issues of state requiring his immediate focus. Yet, he had not abandoned his wish for your teachings. He has designated me to represent him, to absorb your wisdom and accurately relay it back to him. The man paused, evidently hoping this arrangement would meet with your approval. The Baron's inquiry centers on the essence of the mind. He seeks to uncover the true nature of consciousness and wishes to learn how one might realize it directly. If you would be willing to share your insights on this subject, I vow to transmit every detail precisely as you express it. Bankai received the request with gentle consideration, his demeanor remaining serene and understanding. After the gentleman concluded, the master fell into a contemplative silence, weighing not only the inquiry but the entirety of the scenario, the absent seeker, the earnest intermediary, and the daunting challenge inherent in the request. Finally, Bang responded with his usual clarity and straightforwardness. The truth of Zen is notoriously hard to communicate. even through direct dialogue between teacher and pupil in person. It becomes exceedingly harder, bordering on impossible, when filtered through a messenger, no matter how sincere or capable they might be. Once he finished this thought, the master maintained his silence, embodying the very lesson he had just conveyed. The gentleman lingered, perhaps anticipating a deeper explanation or alternative paths, but none ensued. Eventually, feeling at a loss for words and mildly bewildered, he bowed respectfully and exited the temple. The Buddha once advised, "Be a light unto yourself." This empowering insight shines through in Bankai's gentle yet resolute refusal to reduce Zen wisdom into a message susceptible to delivery by proxy. Spiritual enlightenment cannot be conveyed in a secondary manner because it transcends mere information. It is transformation. Why do we so frequently approach spiritual education as though it were mere academic knowledge to be gathered and distributed through intermediaries? Zen Buddhism illustrates that true awakening is not a concept to be comprehended, but a reality to be directly encountered. Similar to the experience of quenching thirst by drinking water, it defies adequate verbal description. One must engage with it firsthand. The Baron's inquiry concerning the essence of consciousness exemplifies our common approach to spiritual exploration. We often aspire to intellectualize awareness, aiming to grasp it as a concept to possess as knowledge. Yet consciousness cannot be objectified for study, as it is inherently the subject doing the studying. It's akin to attempting to see your own eyes without a mirror. The act of seeing is precisely what you aim to observe. Reflect on how frequently in your daily life you might treat spiritual wisdom as mere information to gather rather than a truth to inhabit. We read volumes on meditation instead of engaging in the practice itself. We analyze descriptions of enlightenment rather than probing our current experiences. We seek explanations about the nature of the mind instead of directly scrutinizing what we define as mind. In this moment, Zen Master Dogen taught that to explore the Buddha way is to explore the self. To explore the self is to forget the self. This paradox strikes at the core of why spiritual transmission necessitates direct engagement. The self that yearns to understand Buddhism via an intellectual lens must be perceived as an illusion that needs transcending. This perception occurs not through the accumulation of knowledge, but through an intimate exploration of immediate experience. The messenger in this narrative symbolizes our own inclination to approach awakening in an indirect manner. We wish to comprehend consciousness from an emotionally safe vantage point, sustaining the delusion that we are separate observers examining an entity known as awareness. However, awareness is fundamentally who we are. It is not a possession. It eludes understanding or transmission because we are the very expressions of it. Bank's silence following his brief elucidation served as a piece of its own. In Zen, silence often conveys meanings beyond spoken words. The spaces between thoughts, the pauses between breaths, the acknowledgement in which all experiences emerge. These cannot be encapsulated in language but can be directly recognized when we cease attempting to conceptualize them. This is not to imply that spiritual teachings lack value or that teachers are superfluous. It rather indicates that genuine teaching guides students toward their own direct experience instead of offering second-hand accounts of someone else's realizations. The teacher's role is not to impart enlightenment, but to cultivate conditions that allow students to recognize their inherent nature. As you absorb the immediate reality of being conscious, aware of these words, aware of your body, aware of the very space from which thoughts and sensations surface, can you engage with this awareness directly instead of through abstract theories? Can you be present with your experience rather than trying to understand it through someone else's narratives? As the Buddha instructed, pursue your own salvation with diligence. The journey to liberation cannot be undertaken by proxy. It demands your feet, your breath, your unwavering willingness to look candidly at what you have always been but perhaps have never perceived clearly. Our following tale unveils the stark contrast between spiritual performance and genuine understanding. This conveys the teaching regarding the head that yearns to be severed. In the revered monastery of Chao Chu, where countless monks gathered, morning rituals, a Zen teaching. In a serene retreat where monks convened each day for reflection and examination, their dawn rituals adhered to ancient traditions. Following their early meditation sessions, as daylight first grazed the mountain tips encircling the monastery, the monks would scatter to fulfill their various obligations. Some tended the gardens, some worked in the kitchen, while others copied sacred texts or carried out maintenance on the premises. On one particular morning, the esteemed Abbot Chao Cho embarked on his regular stroll across the monastery grounds, ensuring the well-being of his disciples and assessing the state of their practice. His presence radiated gentleness yet held an intensity. The monks understood that their most casual remarks could evolve into significant lessons, or that their profound spiritual insights might ultimately prove to be empty intellectualism. As he meandered behind the main meditation hall, a place where the community gathered twice daily for silent contemplation, the abbot spied a young monk situated in solitude under the shadow of the wooden edifice. The monk seemed engaged in his own personal practice, distinctly separate from the day's organized communal activities. "Brother," Chao called softly, advancing with the hushed footsteps that had become second nature after years of mindful walking. "Where have all the virtuous ones gone?" This inquiry appeared straightforward, almost informal. However, those who were acquainted with Chao Cho's teaching methods grasped the underlying complexity of his question. Was he inquiring about their physical whereabouts, their spiritual progress, or something entirely different? The youthful monk lifted his gaze, exuding a sense of assured understanding. Having spent several years in the monastery, he took pride in his comprehension of key Zen principles and saw this as an opportunity to exhibit his grasp of the Dharma. "They have all gone to work," he replied flatly, gesturing toward the different areas of the monastery where his fellow monks busied themselves with daily tasks. His tone implied that the answer was self-evident, that virtuous individuals engaged in fruitful endeavors rather than remaining idle. What transpired next utterly stunned the young monk. Suddenly, Chao pulled a knife from the folds of his robe, its blade glinting in the nascent sunlight. Rather than menacing the young monk, the abbot executed an even more unsettling action. With a serene demeanor, Chao extended his neck, laying himself bare to the blade, and handed the knife to the bewildered monk. Maintaining a gentle and relatable tone, as though making the most reasonable request imaginable, he spoke, "My responsibilities as abbot are numerous and challenging. I wonder if you would kindly assist me by taking my head. It would greatly alleviate my burdens." The young monk's eyes widened in terror. His hands quaked as he looked at the knife now in his grip and then at the exposed neck of his revered teacher. The entire scenario contradicted his notions of appropriate monastic conduct, spiritual guidance, and fundamental human kindness. Unable to fathom the request or the reasons behind it and seeing only the literal surface of the abbot's request, he dropped the knife and fled. His feet carried him away from the meditation hall, from the inscrutable scene, his mind swirling with dread and confusion. Chow calmly retrieved the fallen knife, tucked it back into his robe, and resumed his morning stroll, maintaining the same tranquil composure he had preserved throughout the encounter. As the Buddha noted, what matters more is the journey than merely the destination. The essence of this tale illustrates the stark contrast between intellectual comprehension and true realization. Why do we frequently confuse conceptual knowledge with genuine insight? Zen Buddhism reveals that the thinking mind delights in amassing spiritual concepts and organizing them into tidy classifications, fabricating the illusion of understanding without experiencing the transformative nature of direct insight. The young monk's statement, "They have all gone to work," exemplifies the type of dualistic reasoning that segregates spiritual practice from everyday actions. His reply indicated that virtue resided in engaging in productive tasks instead of remaining still, suggesting his belief that enlightened action and rest existed in opposition. Yet, Chow's teaching penetrated far deeper than this superficial reading. By offering his neck to the knife, he was posing a profound question. If the monk genuinely understood that the virtuous ones were engaged in work, what work was truly of utmost importance? If responsibility was paramount, what response was most compassionate towards suffering? Reflect on your own spiritual beliefs. How frequently do we petition life into spiritual activities and mundane ones, meaningful tasks and trivial chores, sacred time and ordinary moments? This dualistic perspective hinders us from recognizing that every moment provides opportunities for awakened responses. The abbot's gesture points directly at the core of Zen understanding. True compassion often necessitates actions that transcend traditional thought. When someone bears the weight of responsibility, attachment, or even spiritual seeking itself, what is the most nurturing response? Occasionally, it involves severing what appears most valuable, our concepts, our roles, and even our perception of a separate self. Zen Master Lingyi once taught, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill the Buddha." This renowned adage aligns with the radical lesson conveyed by Chow. Any rigid belief regarding enlightenment, any clinging to spiritual identities or notions, obstructs the path to direct realization. Authentic compassion may require dismantling what we believe we are protecting. The young monk's fright and retreat illustrated how completely he overlooked this deeper level of teaching. He remained ensnared in literal interpretation, unable to perceive beyond the surface of the abbot's request, the invitation to transformation. His insights into spirituality, although eloquently expressed, remained solely in the realm of ideas. Reflect on your own connection to spiritual responsibility and the act of aiding others. When others seek assistance for their pain, do we provide them with ideas and suggestions, or do we draw from a deeper well of comprehension? Are we willing to abandon our comfortable spiritual beliefs to genuinely meet people at their level? This timeless wisdom reveals the distinction between merely discussing virtue and truly living it. The monk could recognize where those with virtue gather and what actions they take. Yet, when confronted with a chance for profound compassion, he turned away. His understanding was detached from immediate, awakened action. In Zen practice, we nurture what is termed great doubt, a readiness to question even our most treasured spiritual beliefs. This doubt isn't skepticism. Rather, it is receptiveness to insights that go beyond our existing conceptual frameworks. Are we ready to have our spiritual certainties tested, perhaps even dismantled, for the sake of awakening? As you encounter situations tonight that provide chances to assist others with their struggles, can you discern the variance between offering what you believe they require versus responding from authentic understanding? Can you sense how true compassion sometimes necessitates breaking through your own comfortable preconceptions of what appropriate spiritual conduct entails? Buddha once remarked, "To care for others is to care for oneself. To care for oneself is to care for others." The abbot's willingness to sacrifice his own life illustrates this non-dual perspective. When we genuinely grasp interconnectedness, the barriers separating self from other and helper from helped start to blur, leading to spontaneous compassionate actions. Now, let us delve into a Zen tale that explores the essence of spiritual truth. This is the encounter between the emperor and the Zen master. In ancient China, there was an emperor renowned for his dedication to the Buddhist path. Unlike many rulers fixated on wealth and land, this emperor dedicated countless years to studying sacred writings, supporting monasteries, and pursuing the profound truths of existence. His palace library boasted thousands of scrolls, and he invited multiple learned monks to impart their wisdom. Upon hearing about a venerable Zen master whose comprehension surpassed traditional knowledge, the emperor wasted no time extending an invitation. He was eager to measure his own understanding against this master's esteemed wisdom. On the day the master arrived, excitement rippled through the palace. The emperor had meticulously crafted questions meant to display both his commitment and sophisticated understanding of Buddhist teachings. Surely, such preparation would leave even the most skilled teacher impressed. When the master stepped into the throne room, he appeared remarkably unremarkable. His garments were simple and worn from travel, and his demeanor was humble yet alert. Seated upon his golden throne, adorned with paintings of Buddhist figures, the emperor felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. "Esteemed master," the emperor began, his voice resonating through the grand hall filled with precious artifacts and sacred symbols. "I have devoted many years to studying the Buddhist teachings. I have constructed temples, supported monks, and dedicated my life to unraveling the sacred path. Now, I seek your insight. What is the highest truth of the sacred Buddhist teaching?" The emperor leaned in eagerly, hoping for a profound discussion that would validate his years of hard work. Perhaps the master would expound on the Four Noble Truths or unveil a secret teaching passed through generations. Instead, the master met the emperor's gaze directly, with an intensity that seemed to pierce through all facades. His response was simple: vast emptiness and an absence of holiness. Silence enveloped the throne room. The emperor blinked, convinced he must have heard wrong. Where was the intricate explanation of Buddhist cosmology? Where were the references to sacred texts and divine principles? If there is no holiness, the emperor queried, his voice revealing confusion and concern. Who or what are you then? If no sacred truth exists to be attained, what qualifies you as a master? The emperor's inquiries bore the weight of years spent amassing spiritual knowledge and religious merit. He had built his identity around being a devout Buddhist monarch, and the master's words appeared to erode the foundation of that meticulously crafted self-image. With the same calm directness, the master replied, "I do not know." With those three straightforward words, the master dismantled every idea, every identity, every claim to understanding that the emperor had accumulated. The master exited as unobtrusively as he had entered, leaving the emperor in reflective silence. As Buddha noted, those who believe they know do not know. Those who know they do not know, know. This paradoxical teaching lies at the core of Zen insight. Genuine wisdom does not begin with the accumulation of knowledge, but with the acknowledgement of the limitations inherent in conceptual thinking itself. The deeper lesson presented here illustrates that spiritual searching can become just another form of attachment. We gather teachings and insights like priceless gems, convinced that enlightenment resides in the acquisition of sufficient sacred understanding. However, ultimate truth is neither a possession nor can it be expressed in conventional terms. The Master's proclamation of vast emptiness refers to shunyata, often interpreted as emptiness. This doesn't imply that nothing exists, but rather that nothing exists in the solid, independent manner our thoughts suggest. Every phenomenon emerges interdependently, devoid of a fixed essence. This emptiness isn't a concept to comprehend, but a reality to embody. When the Master states there is no trace of holiness, he isn't negating spiritual experience. Rather, he points to a truth that transcends dualistic thinking, one that separates the sacred from the mundane. The quest for holiness itself suggests that our present experiences are somehow lacking the essence of belief and the path we forge. Consider how this teaching might shed light on your spiritual journey. Have you observed how the mind attempts to turn profound insights into possessions? We have transformative experiences and yearn to analyze, categorize, and replicate them. However, each time we grasp, we stray from the simple presence that made such experiences possible. The Emperor symbolizes the earnest seeker who has mistaken spiritual materialism for true enlightenment. His years of learning were not in vain, but they had become barriers to the immediate recognition of what is perpetually present. The phrase, "the Master's I do not know," embodies the wisdom of the don't know mind. This state is not about ignorance, but represents an open, unknowing condition that remains receptive to reality rather than filtering through preconceived notions. From this place, appropriate action can arise unobstructed by conceptual interference. In a culture that esteems knowledge, admitting ignorance often feels like a failure. Yet in Zen wisdom, this acknowledgement opens a gateway to new awareness. The expert's mind sees only what it anticipates, whereas the beginner's mind perceives what exists in reality. As you find rest in this moment's presence, consider what it feels like to temporarily set aside all that you believe you know about spirituality. Can you sense the liberation found in not knowing? The expansiveness that emerges when we cease to fill emptiness with ideas. As the Buddha taught, there is no distinction of east and west in the vast sky. Humans fabricate distinctions from their own minds, then steadfastly hold them as truth. The immense emptiness to which the Master points is infinitely spacious, encompassing all possibilities while being constrained by none. In recognizing this emptiness as our genuine nature, we unearth the most ordinary miracle, this moment, precisely as it is, complete and unblemished. Now, let us delve into a narrative about the impact of belief and the path we create through faith itself. This is the story of a general and the coin that unveiled the truth. A Japanese general confronted a seemingly insurmountable challenge. His forces were vastly outnumbered by the enemy. The terrain was advantageous to his opponents, and by all traditional military strategies, the upcoming battle should end in catastrophic defeat. Yet, an inner conviction persisted within him, believing that victory was possible. Perhaps it was an instinctive feeling, or perhaps it was sheer desperation, but he knew his cause was just. Though his soldiers were fewer, they held a fighting spirit that could rise against the odds. The true struggle lay with his troops. They could count, just as he could, and their eyes bore witness to the enormous enemy force assembled against them. Fear surged through their line like a contagion. Doubt clouded their expressions. Pessimistic whispers circulated throughout the camp, and the general sensed their morale plummeting even before the battle began. He understood that an army resigned to defeat would ultimately be defeated, regardless of any other factors. Technical prowess, superior weaponry, and even sheer numbers mean little when soldiers have surrendered within their hearts. However, an army imbued with belief in its victory can achieve remarkable feats through the strength of that very conviction. On the morning of the battle, as they marched toward their fate, the general led his men to a small shrine positioned near the path. This sacred place had been the refuge of countless warriors throughout the centuries, a spot for prayer before confronting uncertain destinies. The general gathered his men close and guided them in heartfelt prayer, seeking divine favor and protection for the approaching fight. Once the prayers concluded, he pulled a simple coin from his pocket and held it aloft for all to see. "My brothers," he called out, his voice resonating across the gathered ranks, "we have prayed, and now we will allow heaven itself to unveil our fate. I shall toss this coin into the air. If it lands heads, our destiny is to emerge victorious in this battle. If it lands tails, we are meant to lose. Let us discern what the heavens have ordained for us." The soldiers crowded in, their breaths shallow with anticipation. Everything hinged on this immediate moment, this singular flip of metal soaring through the morning sky. The general tossed the coin high, and every eye followed its arc as it ascended, suspended for an instant against the backdrop of the sky before plummeting back toward the earth. The coin landed and settled in the dust. It was heads. An uproar of cheer erupted from the soldiers, a sound that likely echoed for miles. Those who had been somber and fearful moments earlier now laughed with glee and embraced one another, infused with renewed confidence. The heavens had spoken. Victory was guaranteed. Their cause had received blessings from above. Empowered by this divine assurance, the soldiers charged at their foes with fierce determination and synchronized might, achieving precisely what the coin had foretold. Against all expectations, they claimed a decisive victory, rooting forces much larger than their own and securing a triumph that would echo through generations. After the battle, as the general moved among his jubilant men, his lieutenant approached him, or sparkling in his eyes. "General," the lieutenant exclaimed, "what an extraordinary occurrence! The coin unveiled our true destiny, just as you foretold. Surely, no human force can alter what the heavens have decided." "You are completely correct," the general responded with a knowing smile. He reached into his pocket and retrieved the coin, showing it to his lieutenant for closer inspection. "No one can change destiny." The lieutenant examined the coin closely and gasped. Both sides revealed heads. The Buddha once remarked, "All that we are is a reflection of our thoughts. The mind is everything. What we think we become." Here lies the profound insight that destiny is not merely something that befalls us, but rather something we sculpt through the power of our beliefs and expectations. The fate of possibility. Why do we often believe that our destiny is unchangeable when our thoughts have such significant sway over our experiences? Zen Buddhism conveys that while we cannot control every external factor, we wield immense influence over our inner landscape, which shapes our responses to what life presents us. An insightful general grasped something fundamental about human nature and the essence of reality. He understood that the belief in victory among his troops was more crucial than the numerical disadvantages they faced. He recognized that confidence, resolve, and a fighting spirit could prevail over a larger enemy contingent when these qualities were authentically present. Yet, there is an even deeper lesson here. The general didn't merely deceive his men. He fostered an environment that allowed their inherent bravery and resilience to shine through. The soldiers were always capable of extraordinary feats. They just needed to have faith in themselves and their mission. Reflect on your relationship with fate and potential. How frequently do you view results as predetermined, feeling that your success or failure is outside your control? The two-sided coin the general possessed symbolizes the ability we all have to sway events towards favorable outcomes based on how we engage with life. This isn't to suggest that we can dictate everything simply by thinking positively, or that wishing for something guarantees it happens. The soldiers still needed to fight and prove their skills. Their belief in victory, however, established the mental environment essential for their best attributes to come forth. In Zen practice, we cultivate the balanced interplay between effort and surrender, intention and acceptance. We learn that while we can't control particular results, we can significantly shape the focus and energy we bring to any circumstance. This mode of engagement often dictates our experiences of success or failure, irrespective of the external situation. Zen Master Hungpa imparted, "Fools dismiss what they perceive, not what they ponder. The wise dismiss what they ponder, not what they perceive." The general understood that his soldiers' perceptions about the battle bore more weight than their concerns about the numbers they faced. He embraced the realities of psychology instead of resisting them. Take a moment to examine the various hurdles and opportunities in your own life. Are you holding on to a defeatist mindset, presuming loss before fully committing, or prioritizing obstacles over possibilities? Are you allowing fear to dictate your efforts? Where might you have to establish your own two-sided coin? A practice or perspective that consistently reorients you towards positive engagement regardless of the situation. The Buddha conveyed, "We are shaped by our thoughts. What we are arises from our thoughts. With our thoughts, we create the world." This isn't mere wishful thinking, but a recognition of the transformative power of consciousness. When we approach our challenges with authentic confidence, lucidity, and dedication, we often unveil abilities we didn't know we had. As you reflect on your current struggles and the outcomes you desire, can you uncover your own variation of the general's insight? Can you cultivate inner conditions supportive of your greatest potential rather than your deepest anxieties? Can you acknowledge that while you cannot steer destiny, you have substantial power over the beliefs and attitudes that mold how destiny manifests through you? The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that a single candle can light thousands more without diminishing its own flame. Happiness never diminishes through sharing. The general's faith ignited the spark of belief within every soldier. Sometimes, the most potent action we can take is to establish environments that enable both ourselves and others to uncover the strengths that have always existed within. Now, let's turn our attention to the story of a young monk who felt he had faltered in his spiritual path. This is the narrative of the Golden Wake. At a tranquil monastery beside a calm mountain lake, a young disciple sat forlornly on the temple steps as the sun began its descent towards the water. His shoulders drooped under the weight of disappointment, and his eyes mirrored the sorrow in his heart. "The boat is coming to take me home because I have failed in my studies here," he informed his teacher, who had quietly approached and seated himself beside the boy. "What will I say to my family? They sent me here filled with hope, believing I would return as an enlightened monk capable of guiding others on their journey." The old mentor gazed over the lake where a small wooden boat was slowly gliding across the placid waters. The setting sun bathed everything in golden hues. "Tell them you did your best. That's all anyone can ask of you," he replied softly, his voice rich with life lessons. "But I wanted to become a renowned monk and instruct others," the young man lamented, his tone heavy with sadness. "I envisioned leading meditation sessions, having students seek my counsel, making a genuine impact in the world." "You can," the teacher replied matter-of-factly. "How?" the despondent boy asked, looking at the teacher with bewilderment. "I couldn't even memorize the foundational sutras. I dozed off during meditation. I've failed at everything important." The teacher smiled and gestured towards the lake. "Live from your heart. Allow me to show you. Do you see that boat moving across the water with the sun setting behind it?" "Yes," the boy answered, following his teacher's gaze. "Do you observe its wake spreading across the lake? Notice how the boat forms the apex of a golden triangle as the wake expands from its front." The boy squinted as he tried to comprehend what his teacher was illustrating. "Kind of. The unseen impact of a single boat. Squint a little," the teacher said with a gentle tone. "That boat represents you. As you depart the monastery, the lake reflects your journey through life. The wake behind it signifies the impact you have on the world around you. Each ripple reverberates, causing yet another ripple, which in turn initiates more. By persistently striving to live a life filled with wisdom and compassion, you can convey the essence of love to everyone you encounter simply by being true to yourself. Some of these individuals will relay your positive influence to others. Hence, the broadening golden trail of good deeds inspires further acts of kindness. Most importantly, Take note of how each ripple captures sunlight and redirects its glow back to the heavens. The boy observed in, or as the modest boat progressed, the wake forming an increasingly broad triangle of shimmering light upon the surface of the lake. Each minor wave caught the glistening rays of sunlight, refracting them back toward the sky in countless twinkling sparks. "Would you accompany me to my home and explain everything to my father?" the boy inquired, anticipation beginning to flicker in his voice. Buddha's wisdom reminds us, a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. The more profound lesson here illustrates that influence spreads not through grand displays or perfect mastery, but through the simple genuineness of a heart devoted to goodness. Why is it that we assume only official qualifications or recognized successes empower us to create a significant impact? Zen Buddhism sheds light on our reliance on external approval and our misunderstandings about how wisdom truly flows from one individual to another. We often envision teaching as requiring a podium, a title, or a certificate when, in reality, the most significant wisdom is conveyed through the essence of our presence and the strength of our actions. Think of how regularly you meet individuals who enrich your life, not through their expertise, but through their kindness, patience, or simple humanity. The grocery store clerk who warmly greets you, the stranger who offers directions with a friendly smile, the friend who listens without passing judgment. These people create ripples that extend far beyond their own awareness. In Zen practice, we nurture what could be termed unconscious teaching. This natural transmission takes place when we align our actions with our fundamental values. Like that boat on the lake, we may not perceive our wake, but it unfailingly spreads behind us, reaching shores we weren't aware existed. The Buddha stated, "Thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened." Happiness never diminishes by being shared. Each instant of authentic living becomes a teaching moment. Every act of kindness generates ripples. Each decision to act wisely rather than impulsively sends light back toward the heavens. As you contemplate your own path tonight, can you recognize the golden wake you're already creating? Maybe it's evident in the patience you extend to a challenging family member, the encouragement you offer a colleague who is struggling, or the simple presence you bring to daily interactions. The light you reflect may illuminate paths you never considered. Let's continue on our journey with a lesson regarding the perilous divide between theoretical understanding and lived experience. This tale features the one-eyed monk and the silent contest. In ancient China, when wandering monks traveled from one monastery to another in search of teachings and testing their insights, a particular tradition evolved within Zen communities. Before a wandering monk could find shelter for the night, he had to participate in what was known as Dharma combat with either the abbot or a chosen representative. This wasn't a physical confrontation, but rather a battle of spiritual acuity and comprehension where profound questions and paradoxical responses unveiled the depth of both participants' realizations. In a celebrated monastery nestled amidst bamboo woods, a weary monk arrived as twilight cast elongated shadows across the grounds. His robes bore the dust of mountain trails, his straw sandals were nearly worn through, yet his eyes sparkled with an alertness characteristic of someone sincerely yearning for deeper insight. The abbot, occupied with evening obligations, entrusted his personal aide to manage the customary Dharma encounter. This aide had served the monastery diligently for many years, despite possessing what some may view as a hindrance, he had lost one eye in an accident during his younger years. Regardless of this physical barrier, or perhaps due to the clarity it granted his inner vision, he had cultivated a profound understanding of Buddha's teachings. When the two monks convened in the monastery's official reception area, the traveling monk proposed an unconventional idea: let's partake in silent debate, suggesting they would communicate through gestures rather than spoken language. Sometimes, the deepest truths surpass verbal expression altogether. The attendant nodded in agreement, and they commenced their non-verbal exchange. The wayfarer raised a finger skyward, holding it steady with an expression of serene confidence. Without pausing, the attendant responded by lifting two fingers. The traveling monk, appearing satisfied with this reply, then raised three fingers. The attendant then surprised him by forming a tight fist, holding it firmly before them. The traveling monk's confident demeanor faltered. For a brief moment, he stared at the clenched fist, his expression shifting to confusion and a hint of alarm. Then, with no further gestures, he bowed swiftly and exited the hall. Shortly thereafter, he approached the abbot, who observed him with interest. "Please tell me what occurred in your exchange," the abbot inquired. The traveler explained earnestly, "I began by raising one finger to symbolize the Buddha, the awakened one who shows the journey to clarity. In a tranquil setting, a monk sought enlightenment. When prompted by a wandering monk to teach the way, he responded with two fingers, representing both the teacher, the Buddha, and the teachings known as the Dharma. In return, I lifted three fingers, symbolizing the complete trio of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, the community of followers. However, the wandering monk then raised a clenched fist, indicating that all three elements are essentially one. His comprehension surpassed my own, compelling me to seek further guidance before feeling worthy of remaining in his presence." The abbot absorbed this narrative with increasing astonishment, fully aware of his attendant's character. As the traveler melted into the evening shadows, the attendant rushed in, visibly perturbed and panting as though he'd been sprinting. "Where is that insolent fellow?" he demanded, his soul irradiating fury. "I've searched everywhere for him. How brazen! Such unwarranted rudeness cloaked as spiritual discourse. What transpired between you two?" The abbot inquired, intrigued about the starkly different interpretations that unfolded from the same encounter. "First," recounted the attendant, his voice escalating with the memory of offense, "he mocked me by raising one finger, implying I have just one eye. Can you believe that? Here I thought we were engaging in a spiritual discussion, and he immediately pointed out my physical limitation. Determined to remain courteous despite his tactlessness, I raised two fingers to acknowledge that he was fortunate enough to have two eyes, signifying that I held no malice for his thoughtless remark." He paused to regain his composure, his agitation surging anew. But the scoundrel wasn't finished with his insults. Next, he raised three fingers, further emphasizing our disparity, suggesting that collectively we had only three eyes. He was clearly intent on highlighting my disability, ensuring it remained in my mind. That's when I reached my breaking point. I clenched my fist, ready to strike him for his continuous disrespect. But the coward fled before I could administer a lesson in etiquette. The abbot stood in astonished silence, reflecting on this striking instance of how two individuals could witness the same events while living in utterly divergent interpretations. The Buddha taught, "We perceive the world not as it is, but as we are." This profound insight illustrates the complete miscommunication evident between the two monks, each of whom experienced the exact same sign language within completely distinctive frames of reference. Why do we habitually project our concerns, insecurities, and beliefs onto neutral scenarios? Zen Buddhism identifies what it terms the 8 worldly winds: praise and blame, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, fame and disgrace. These psychological influences craft internal climates that distort our perceptions of the world around us. The attendant's sensitive feelings regarding his missing eye created a filter through which every gesture appeared as a personal affront. His previous encounters of being judged or scorned due to his appearance left him with such a robust interpretive lens that alternative meanings in the wanderer's gestures eluded him. Likewise, the traveling monk's quest for spiritual enlightenment led him to interpret gestures that stemmed from wounded feelings and rising anger as advanced teachings of the Dharma. His pursuit of profound wisdom caused him to misconstrue increasingly aggressive expressions for advanced insights. Reflect upon your own patterns of interpretation. How frequently do your present anxieties, past traumas, or ongoing ambitions lead you to completely misinterpret situations? Perhaps someone's seemingly distracted demeanor convinces you they harbor dislike for you when, in reality, they are preoccupied with a loved one's health. Maybe a colleague's supportive feedback feels like an attack because you feel uncertain about your capabilities. This ancient truth unveils how our internal milieu shapes our external experiences. Both monks were earnest in their perceptions, yet both fundamentally misjudged the reality of the situation. Neither was deceitful or intentionally misreading. They were simply interpreting through the prism of their own psychological backgrounds. The narrative leads us to a vital inquiry. How can we cultivate the ability to perceive situations with greater clarity and less through the lens of our biases and interpretations? Zen practice presents various methods for tackling this challenge. The first is what is known as don't know mind. This practice encourages openness to multiple interpretations, avoiding the tendency to hastily settle on the explanation that affirms our pre-existing beliefs or fears. When confronted with actions that trigger our biases, can we pause and consider alternative explanations? The second practice involves mindfulness of our emotional states. The attendant could have recognized his increased sensitivity about his appearance, acknowledging how it was tinting his perception. The traveler might have reflected on his eagerness to discover profound teachings and questioned whether he was genuinely identifying wisdom where there was none. A Zen master once said, "Your everyday mind is the way." This teaching encourages us to scrutinize the very mental processes that generate interpretations rather than being consumed by attempting to decipher the correct interpretation of external events. The Buddha articulated, "Hatred is never alleviated by hatred in this world. Only through non-hatred can hatred be pacified. This is an eternal principle." Had the attendant approached the traveler's perceived slights with curiosity instead of defensiveness, and had the traveler examined his assumptions about enlightened conduct, their meeting might have evolved into a genuine lesson for both. This evening, as you reflect on dialogues and interactions from your day, Can you discern how your personal concerns and sensitivities may have influenced your interpretations? Can you distinguish the difference between your own cognitive filters and genuine intent? What truly transpired and the interpretation your mind added to those occurrences? As the Buddha stated, serenity arises from within. Do not seek it externally. By realizing how our inner climate shapes our outside turbulence, we unveil the potential for clear insight that nourishes both wisdom and empathy. Our forthcoming narrative unveils a profound insight about how attachment can taint the very essence of what we profess to cherish. This is the story of the chrysanthemum estate. In the idyllic countryside of ancient Japan, where autumn fog gracefully danced over well-tended landscapes, there resided a prosperous baron whose enthusiasm veered into obsession. His mansion rose majestically among gentle hills, but it was the garden behind that completely captivated him. In that space, rows upon rows of chrysanthemums flourished in breathtaking beauty, their hues spanning deep violet to bright gold and immaculate white. The baron spent countless hours tending to these blossoms, examining each variant with scholarly passion, nurturing each flower with paternal care. His knowledge was vast, and his commitment unwavering. Yet, this fervor morphed from love into a darker form. The baron devoted more focus to his chrysanthemums than to his wife and children. The household endured a constant undercurrent of fear, aware that any slip near the cherished blooms could result in harsh repercussions. Numerous servants had felt his wrath for unwittingly snapping a flower head. The atmosphere grew oppressive, saturated with tension and resentment. One fateful autumn day, calamity struck. A loyal servant, hurrying to fulfill his tasks, accidentally grazed a treasured chrysanthemum, breaking off its perfect petal. When the baron discovered the ruined flower, his fury erupted like a volcano. "Imprison him," he bellowed. The retainer was swiftly incarcerated for this unintentional mishap. However, the punishment felt drastically excessive, causing the retainer's shame to twist into a deep-seated rage. According to the warrior's honor code, he decided to make a statement through seppuku, ritual self-disembowelment, opting for death over the humiliation brought on by a mere flower. News of this tragedy reached Zen Master Sengai, a wise and compassionate mentor. Realizing that a man's life was precariously balanced over botanical beauty, Sengai hastened to the estate to successfully avert the suicide. Nonetheless, the master recognized that saving one life would not resolve the underlying issue. Sengai devised an audacious plan. On a rainy evening, while the chrysanthemums were in their most breathtaking bloom, he stealthily entered the baron's garden wielding a sharp sickle. Operating meticulously in the shadows, he harvested every last chrysanthemum, hundreds of flowers that symbolized years of painstaking cultivation. The noise stirred the baron, who rushed to his window to witness a shadowy figure amidst his beloved blooms. Seizing his sword, he dashed outside in a frenzy, demanding to understand the intruder's purpose. Sengai stood composed among the devastation, surrounded by fallen petals. "Even weeds can become rank if left unchecked," he answered with serene equanimity. In that instant, the baron's obsession shattered like fragile glass. Observing his flowers reduced to mere weeds in the master's perception, he abruptly grasped the distortion of his view. It was akin to awakening from a delirious dream. From that night forth, the Baron never tended to chrysanthemums again. The Buddha conveyed, "Attachment is the source of suffering." This age-old wisdom sheds light on what the Baron discovered through Sengai's bold intervention. When we cling too fervently to anything, even beautiful entities, we convert love into possession and beauty into a burden. This essential truth is revealed through the way attachment corrupts what we claim to value. The Baron genuinely cherished chrysanthemums. However, his attachment poisoned that affection, transforming admiration into obsession, care into control, and allure into a source of fear for those around him. Why do we equate love with possession? Buddhism elucidates that the egoic mind seeks security via control, striving to make permanent what is transient by nature. True love appreciates without grasping, enjoys without owning, and cares without controlling. Conversely, attachment love seeks to cement beauty in place, making the beloved an extension of our own identity. Reflect upon how this dynamic surfaces in contemporary relationships. Parents who love their children intensely to the point of becoming controlling, stifling the very growth they profess to nurture. Partners who love so possessively that they breed jealousy and mistrust. Collectors who become so fixated on their possessions that they lose the joy of genuinely experiencing their belongings. The chrysanthemums symbolize anything we elevate beyond its rightful position in the natural order. This could pertain to our career achievements, physical appearance, spiritual milestones, or our carefully curated lifestyles. When we become too attached, we breed suffering not just for ourselves but for everyone in our sphere. Zen Master Suzuki Roshi remarked, "Each of you is perfect as you are, yet there's room for improvement." This paradox highlights the delicate interplay between appreciation and attachment. We can love something wholeheartedly while holding it gently, caring deeply without being tethered to outcomes. Sengai's radical action illustrates the sometimes jarring medicine necessary to break through entrenched attachment pathways. At times, we require external circumstances to strip away our clinging before we can see clearly. Loss, disappointment, and impermanence, while painful, frequently serve as teachers, revealing the difference between genuine love and possessive attachment. It's noteworthy that the Baron doesn't merely tone down his gardening, he ceases altogether. This implies that at times the most skillful response to attachment is a complete, temporary withdrawal until we can engage with the object of our attachment through greater freedom and wisdom. As you reflect tonight, the garden of compassion. Reflect on your own existence. What symbolizes your chrysanthemum garden? What do you cherish so fervently that it results in anxiety, control issues, or suffering for you or those around you? Can you visualize fully appreciating these elements while also letting them go? The wisdom of Buddha teaches us that, in the end, only three aspects truly count: the depth of your love, the gentleness of your life, and the grace with which you release what is not destined for you. Genuine love liberates what it values, placing trust in the natural rhythm of coming and going. Our voyage continues with a narrative illustrating the transformative nature of fearlessness and unconditional compassion, the story of the thief and the Zen master. On a tranquil evening, as twilight draped the horizon in hues of purple and gold, Zen master Shishiri Kojin sat in his humble abode, reciting ancient scriptures. His voice flowed in a harmonious rhythm throughout the serene space. Each syllable was a meditation, every inhalation a prayer. The flickering shadows cast by candlelight danced on the walls while he delved deeply into the sacred readings, embracing profound peace within the familiar lines. Abruptly, this tranquility was interrupted. The front door flew open with a resounding crash, and a frantic individual burst in, wielding a sharp blade that glimmered ominously in the illumination. His eyes, wild with desperation, and his attire, grimy and tattered, indicated the urgency of his situation, panting heavily as though he had run a great distance. He had likely chosen this secluded dwelling, believing it would present an easy opportunity. Surely a peaceful monk would resist him not. "Hand over your wealth or your life," the intruder barked, his voice quivering from a blend of trepidation and aggression. He anticipated that the elderly man would tremble, beg, or scurry about looking for some concealed treasures. Yet, Shichiri remained completely engrossed in his sutra, barely acknowledging the man. With a composed demeanor, he continued his recitation momentarily, then paused to address his visitor. "I ask you not to interrupt my meditation," he softly stated, just as one might politely request someone to close a door. "Should you require cash, feel free to take it from that drawer over there." He motioned nonchalantly toward a plain wooden chest, returning promptly to his verses, as if the unusual event held no significance. The thief stood rigid, his sword still poised, utterly perplexed. Throughout his life of crime, he had never encountered such a reaction. There was no fear, no pleas, no hostility, only a straightforward willingness to assist, as if conversing with a neighbor asking to borrow something. Confounded yet intent on his goal, the intruder approached the indicated drawer and began collecting coins and minor treasures he uncovered there. The soft sound of the master's voice continued to resonate behind him, reciting sacred phrases as amiably as if he were by himself. Just as the thief was getting ready to depart with his loot, the master's voice called out again. "Hold on," Shiri said, finally lifting his gaze from the page. "Please, don't take it all. I require some of that money to settle my taxes tomorrow. Just leave a little for me, would you?" The thief stared in disbelief. Here was an individual being robbed, calmly negotiating the terms of his own theft as if they were engaged in a routine transaction. Almost on instinct, the thief placed some of the coins back into the drawer. Turning to depart, convinced that the bizarre encounter was coming to a close, the master's voice halted him once more. "You've taken my money," Shichiri observed, his tone carrying a hint of reproach, "and you didn't even express any gratitude. Isn't that a tad rude?" This final remark left the thief utterly stunned. His grip on the sword began to tremble. Never had he felt so thoroughly unsettled in any of his aggressive encounters. This was a man who regarded theft as if it were a favor, who prioritized courtesy over his own safety. "Thank you," the thief stammered before fleeing into the darkness as swiftly as he could. Later, when the thief was apprehended and confessed to multiple offenses, including the incident at Shichiri's home, the master was summoned as a witness. The court representatives expected him to demand justice and recount the fear and violation he had endured. Instead, Shichiri spoke with the same tranquil clarity he had displayed that evening. "This man didn't steal from me," he said in testimony. "I offered him the money willingly. He even expressed gratitude after I had to remind him, that is. The thief, now in chains, felt something shift within him at these words. This individual had not only exhibited remarkable kindness in the midst of theft, but was now safeguarding him from the results of his actions. For the first time in years, tears welled in his eyes, not tears of anger or self-pity, but tears of recognition. He had encountered something he had never known before, love without conditions. Upon his release from incarceration, the former thief sought out the master, pleading to become his disciple. Under Shichiri's patient instruction, he learned to nurture the same fearless compassion he had witnessed that night. Years later, through diligent practice and the master's unwavering faith in his potential for change, he achieved the profound peace and understanding of enlightenment. As the Buddha pointed out, hatred dissolves not through hatred but solely through love. This is the fundamental truth. The essence of this story reveals the revolutionary strength of confronting violence with unwavering peace, responding to taking with generosity, and countering fear with love. Why do we inherently believe that force must be met with force, that aggression incites a defensive reaction? Zen Buddhism illustrates that while this pattern may seem instinctive, it often perpetuates the very conflicts it aims to resolve. When we meet hostility with hostility, we merely intensify the cycle of suffering. However, when we respond with true compassion, not as passive acceptance but as proactive love, we create an opportunity for transformation that might not be achievable otherwise. Reflect deeply on your own experiences. When someone, the stonecutter's awakening, when someone approaches you with anger, criticism, or a demand, what is your instinctive reaction? Many of us instinctively prepare our defenses, ready to retaliate or withdraw. But take a moment to observe what unfolds in your body and mind during these defensive behaviors. Does the tension lessen or escalate? Does the conflict resolve or escalate? Shichiri's approach illustrates what Zen refers to as skillful means, acting from insight instead of reflex. His courage stemmed not from ignorance of peril, but from a profound understanding of reality's essence. He recognized that the thief's hostility emerged from desperation and suffering, rather than from intrinsic malevolence. By choosing not to view him as an adversary, Shichiri opened the door for the thief to re-evaluate himself. In Zen practice, we nurture what could be termed the bravery of defenselessness. This doesn't imply being oblivious to actual threats or allowing ourselves to be harmed without reason. Instead, it embodies the development of the confidence to respond to challenging situations with our highest wisdom rather than primitive instincts. The Buddha conveyed, ultimately, just three things are significant: the quality of our living, the depth of our love, the ability to release. Shichiri exemplified all three during his encounter with the thief. He lived in complete awareness, loved unconditionally, and released any attachment to his possessions or even his safety. Reflect on those individuals in your life who challenge you: the difficult coworker, the judgmental family member, the aggressive driver in front of you. What would happen if you met their energy with the same fearless compassion demonstrated by Shichiri? Not through agreement or submission to their demands, but by refusing to mirror their level of reactivity, staying grounded in your own peace, regardless of their actions. As you face your moments of tension or conflict tonight, Can you remember the master who treated a robber with honor? Can you find the space between stimulus and response, where choices exist? A space to respond to hostility with tranquility, generosity with reciprocity, fear with love. The Buddha's wisdom teaches us that better than countless empty words is a single word that brings peace. At times, the mightiest reaction to violence is simply to remain steadfast in our commitment to compassion, understanding that love possesses a transforming power that force cannot rival. As we continue to delve into the wisdom of Zen Buddhism, let us explore a tale about contentment and the essence of desire. This is the journey of the stonecutter. High in mountain villages, there lived a humble stonecutter who, unbeknownst to him, had uncovered the key to happiness. Every morning, he would ascend the winding paths to the quarries, tools balanced on his shoulders. As he toiled among the stones, he would sing ancient mountain songs that reverberated across the valleys. Although he was considered poor by societal standards, residing in a simple hut with few belongings, the stonecutter sought nothing beyond what he already had. His uncomplicated life felt whole. The rhythm of his labor, the majesty of the mountains, the fulfillment of honest work. His heart was unburdened. One day, he was summoned to work on the opulent mansion of a wealthy noble. As he neared the estate, he was struck by its grandeur. Towering marble columns stretched toward the heavens. Gardens lay in flawless arrangement. For the first time, the stonecutter felt a sharp twinge of desire disrupt his contentment. "If only I were wealthy," he lamented. "Then I could live without the sweat and struggle of my current existence." To his astonishment, a voice emanated from the stones. "Your wish is fulfilled. From now on, all you desire will be yours." That evening, he returned home to discover his modest dwelling replaced by a mansion as splendid as the nobleman's own. Overwhelmed with elation, he abandoned his tools and began to indulge in the luxurious life of affluence. However, one sweltering afternoon, as he gazed from his lavish window, he spied the king's royal entourage passing by. The monarch sat in shaded comfort, surrounded by nobles and attendants, exuding tranquility and strength amid the summer heat. "How I wish I were a king," he thought, and in an instant, he found himself lounging on silk cushions within the royal carriage. Yet, the carriage proved warmer than he anticipated. Even through its thick walls, the sun's heat seeped through relentlessly. "I wish to be the sun," he declared, and instantly became a radiant source of light and warmth across the cosmos. As the sun, he felt magnificent and omnipotent until dense storm clouds gathered, entirely obscuring his rays. "I wish to be a cloud." And so he became a colossal storm cloud, reveling in his power to shield the sun. But as he transformed into pouring rain, he encountered a massive rock that obstructed his flow completely. "A mere rock holds more power than I. I want to be a rock," he said, and suddenly stood proudly upon the mountainside, feeling that he had arrived at true permanence. Yet soon, he heard chiseling sounds at his base. Looking down, he saw a tiny human figure carving away bits of stone. "A tiny being more powerful than me. I want to be a man once again." And so he became a stonecutter again, navigating the familiar mountain trails. Yet now, everything had shifted. While shaping the stones and feeling the mountain breezes, his heart brimmed with profound contentment. His song returned, richer than ever, for he had learned to cherish who he truly was. The Buddha once stated, "Health is the ultimate gift. Contentment is the greatest treasure." This age-old wisdom sheds light on the unending cycle of yearning that blinds us to the richness currently present within our lives. Why do we chase after differing conditions, always convinced that happiness resides in the next change? Each desire satisfied merely unveils the next longing, creating an endless loop of discontent. The story of the stonecutter reminds us that true happiness is often found not in accumulating more, but in embracing and appreciating what we already possess. The journey of the stonecutter uncovers the inherent futility of pursuing happiness through external factors. Reflect on your own variations of this cycle. I'll be happier once I'm promoted, only to find fresh stresses arise. I'll feel fulfilled with more money, yet greater wealth introduces new anxieties. Each accomplishment unveils another mountain to scale. Zen instructor Suzuki Roshi stated, "You are each whole as you are, though a bit of improvement can be beneficial." This paradox captures the essence of contentment, which is the ability to wholly accept the present while actively engaging with the natural progressions of life. The stonecutter's ultimate transformation was not about becoming something superior, but rather an appreciation for who he had always been. His tasks remained unchanged, but his interaction with life shifted entirely. True contentment is not found in experiencing different events, but in bringing a fresh perspective to whatever experiences manifest. This evening, as you become aware of the mind's usual tendency to reach for what isn't present, can you experiment with the wisdom of the stonecutter? Can you uncover the melody that arises when you cease striving to be anything beyond your true self? As the Buddha expressed, true wealth lies in contentment. Luxury is merely a form of artificial poverty. The most profound transformation available isn't about becoming someone else, but recognizing the intrinsic wholeness of our present selves. Now, let's delve into a narrative about authentic support and the essence of legitimate teaching. This recounts the meeting between a psychiatrist and a Zen master. During a conference for professionals and spiritual guides, a psychiatrist found himself discussing ideas with a highly esteemed Zen master. He had dedicated his career to aiding people in overcoming psychological hurdles, analyzing issues, and implementing therapeutic strategies aimed at enhancing mental wellness and emotional health. Intrigued by the contrasting methods of assistance, the psychiatrist decided to pose a direct inquiry that had lingered in his thoughts throughout their dialogue. "I've devoted years to learning various methodologies for aiding individuals with their emotional and psychological challenges," he stated. "I'm eager to understand your process. How exactly do you support others?" The master listened attentively, processing not just the inquiry but also the beliefs underpinning it. After a thoughtful pause, he provided an answer that was both straightforward and deeply insightful. "I guide them to a point where questions no longer arise," replied the master. The psychiatrist hesitated, unsure if this was a serious response or perhaps a Zen conundrum. "I don't quite understand," he admitted. "Surely, questioning is crucial for any growth or understanding." The master offered a gentle smile. "Questions stem from a mind that perceives a lack. When one reaches a stage where inquiries naturally cease, they have discovered what they were genuinely longing for all along. Buddha's teachings remind us, question everything, illuminate your own path. Yet, this ancient wisdom reveals a paradox. Genuine discovery happens not through a plethora of questions, but through reaching a state of fullness where inquiries lose their relevance. Why do we presume that assisting others involves supplying answers when true healing might consist of dissolving the questioner altogether? Zen philosophy suggests that many of our troubles persist solely because we continue to pose the questions that foster and sustain them. The psychiatrist's methodology, like that of most caregiving professions, emphasizes dissecting issues, understanding their roots, and crafting strategies to manage or resolve them. This approach holds value and can indeed offer real relief for various forms of suffering. However, the Master's perspective hints at something significantly deeper, guiding individuals to rise above the very constructs that give rise to their problems. Reflect on the myriad questions that fill your mind. How can I attain happiness? Why do I repeatedly make the same errors? What direction should my life take? How can I discern meaning? Each query suggests a seeker who feels incomplete, who desires something, who must uncover something. But what if the seeker themselves is the root of the search? Within Zen practice, we realize that numerous issues are perpetuated by the very endeavor to resolve them. The mind incessantly asking, "How can I achieve serenity?" is identical to the mind that disrupts the peace inherently available. The individual fervently pursuing enlightenment may inadvertently reinforce the very sensation of separation that elicits feelings of being unenlightened. The Master's technique of guiding individuals to a space where inquiries become unnecessary isn't aimed at stifling curiosity or advocating ignorance. Instead, it seeks to illuminate a direct experience of wholeness wherein questions dissipate naturally, as there's nothing further to pursue. Zen Master Bankai articulated, "The unborn Buddha mind can handle anything that surfaces." When one genuinely realizes their fundamental completeness, questions regarding how to achieve that completeness no longer manifest. Problems cease to demand solutions. They are recognized as fleeting appearances within the boundless expanse of awareness. This doesn't imply that practical questions vanish entirely. Functional queries like, "What should I eat for lunch?" or "Which route should I take to work?" serve their purposes. The inquiries that dissolve are those existential ones stemming from an intrinsic sense of lack or incompleteness. The Buddha stated, "There is nothing to be done, nothing to obtain, nothing to forfeit." This teaching corroborates the understanding that the Master was conveying. Authentic assistance stems not from burdening individuals with more tasks or dilemmas to solve, but from aiding them in realizing that they are already what they pursue. Examine your own engagement with questions and the act of seeking. How much of your mental energy is expended? The quest for true understanding, a journey beyond questions. Are you spending your energy trying to solve the puzzle of your existence instead of simply experiencing it? What if you pause to consider what remains when you stop asking questions that imply something is inherently flawed or missing? The psychiatrist offers insights and tools to navigate challenges. Conversely, the Master directs attention toward that which doesn't require analysis or enhancement. Both methodologies can be beneficial, yet the Master's approach seeks the essence rather than the superficial, aiming to dissolve the seeker instead of merely gratifying the search. As you take note of the inquiries that usually occupy your thoughts, can you perceive what lies beneath them? Can you discover the realm of awareness that exists prior to all questions? A completeness that needs no responses since it lacks nothing. As the Buddha taught, inner peace stems from within. Do not seek it externally. The most profound assistance we can give ourselves or grant others is recognizing that what we pursue has always been present. Questions fade not because they've been resolved, but because the one who posed them realizes there was never genuinely anything to inquire about. Let us proceed with a tale illustrating the unexpected wisdom found in humor and the suffering we create through excessive seriousness. This is the account of the monk who found his true instructor. In a secluded mountain monastery in ancient China, a young monk dedicated himself with intense fervor to his spiritual journey. Each dawn before the sun rose, he would awaken for meditation, maintaining immaculate posture for hours without movement. He scrutinized Buddhist scriptures with scholarly care, memorizing sutras, and rigorously discussing philosophical concepts with fierce focus. His companions often commented on his gravity and commitment to the Dharma. One crisp autumn morning, while grappling with a particularly intricate passage concerning the essence of emptiness, the young monk stumbled upon a perplexing conundrum. The text appeared to contradict all he believed he had grasped about Buddhist philosophy. Each word seemed coherent individually, yet together they merged into a conundrum whenever he thought he understood it. Resolute in his quest for clarity, he meticulously marked the section and proceeded to the master's quarters. The venerable teacher sat in his modest space, sunlight filtering through paper windows, casting patterns of illumination and shadow across the wooden floor. "Respected master," the monk said, bowing deeply, "I have encountered a teaching that eludes my understanding. Might you shed light on its significance?" He carefully recited the passage, detailing his confusion and the diverse interpretations he had considered. The master listened attentively, nodding occasionally, his demeanor thoughtful and engaged. However, when the young monk concluded his earnest exposition, something utterly unexpected occurred. The master's face suddenly transformed into a wide grin, followed by gentle chuckling and eventually erupting into joyful, uncontrollable laughter. His entire body vibrated with mirth, tears cascading down his time-worn cheeks. The monk remained motionless, utterly flabbergasted. This was far from the reaction he had anticipated. Instead of profound insight and thoughtful elucidation, he was met with laughter. The master's joy seemed to envelop the entire room, resonating off the walls and amplifying with intensity. Without offering any explanation, the master rose, still laughing, and exited the room, leaving the young monk in a swirl of confusion and escalating distress. For the subsequent 3 days, the monk could not redirect his thoughts. The master's inexplicable laughter tormented him unceasingly. He barely consumed his meals, his meditation sessions were scattered and unfocused, and sleep arrived only in brief, troubled snatches. The inquiry consumed his every emotion. Why was his earnest spiritual quest met with such baffling mirth? Other monks noticed his troubled state, but his responses to their gentle queries were vague and anxious. He felt embarrassed, confused, and increasingly agitated. Had the master mocked his understanding? Was his question inherently foolish? Did his years of sincere practice hold no value? Finally, overwhelmed by the torment, he returned to the master's room. This time, he refrained from bowing or reciting excerpts. Instead, he spoke with raw honesty. "Master, for 3 days, I have been profoundly unsettled by your reaction to my inquiry. I cannot eat, sleep, or meditate correctly. Please tell me, why did you laugh at my sincere search for understanding? Have I erred in some way?" The master's demeanor softened with compassion. He gestured for the young monk to sit beside him, then articulated with calm clarity, "Monk, do you comprehend what your issue is?" The elder inquired gently, "You are worse than a jester." The words struck the young monk as if physically. His eyes grew wide with shock and dismay. "Venerable sir, how can you say this? How can I possibly be worse than a jester? I have committed my life to spiritual practice, striving to comprehend the Buddha's teachings. I have renounced worldly pleasures and pursued wisdom with utmost sincerity. How can you make such a comparison?" The master smiled warmly and elucidated, "A jester's greatest joy comes from bringing laughter. When others laugh, the jester feels fulfillment and happiness. His whole purpose revolves around bringing lightness and joy to the world. Yet you, when another person laughs, feel disturbed, upset, and troubled. Tell me, do you not surpass a jester in your misery?" Upon hearing these words, understanding dawned like the sun piercing through cloudy skies. The young monk instantly recognized how his attachment to being taken seriously had birthed his suffering. He had become so invested in his identity as a devoted practitioner that he could not appreciate the master's happiness. The laughter hadn't been derision. It represented pure joy in witnessing the beauty of the Dharma manifesting through paradox. In that instant of realization, the monk began to laugh. Initially softly, then with increasing freedom and exhilaration. He chuckled at his own misunderstanding, the reflection of understanding. In that moment, the young monk pondered the gravity of his pursuit, reflecting on the delightful paradox of desperately seeking enlightenment while tangled in the seriousness of his quest. He could not help but chuckle, joining in the merriment shared by other masters just days before. In this communal laughter, insight blossomed naturally, embodying the Buddha's teaching. By lighting a lamp for someone, you illuminate your own path. The essence of this wisdom hinges on recognizing how our responses to others illuminate the state of our own minds. Why do we find ourselves unsettled when others express joy in ways that confound us? Zen Buddhism identifies numerous patterns that engender such strife. The first arises from our attachment to validation and comprehension. The disturbance within the young monk did not originate from the master's laughter, but from his desire for his inquiry to be met with the solemnity that he assumed it warranted. Next, there's our identification with our perceived spiritual personas. When we become fixated on being seen as earnest seekers, committed practitioners, or wise learners, we lose the openness that nurtures true understanding. The monk's fixation on his identity as a serious devotee hindered his ability to embrace the teachings conveyed through laughter. Lastly, there's our constrained perception of wisdom's many forms. We often anticipate spiritual teachings to emerge in familiar guises, grave discourses, meticulous analyses, and conventional formats. Yet, enlightenment frequently arrives through unforeseen avenues: a master's laughter, a child's innocent inquiry, the ring of a bell, or a moment of utter normalcy. Consider how often we overlook opportunities for learning simply because they do not conform to our expectations. Perhaps a seemingly trivial comment holds the very insight we require, but we dismiss it since the speaker appears less knowledgeable than ourselves. Life may present us with lessons through scenarios we deem bothersome or individuals we label as trivial. Zen instructor Suzuki Roshi expressed, "In a beginner's mind, there are many opportunities, but in an expert's mind, there are few." The young monk's credentials had inadvertently become a hindrance to his growth. His certainty about the appearance of spiritual teachings obstructed his ability to absorb the profound lesson being delivered through unexpected merriment. This narrative invites us to contemplate a vital question: are we in pursuit of understanding, or are we merely seeking to be understood? Are we receptive to wisdom arriving in any guise, or must it conform to our established beliefs? The Master's laughter served as a lesson in the joy ingrained within the Dharma itself, capturing the playful, spontaneous, and often illogical essence of awakened understanding. As you navigate interactions that challenge your expectations, can you recall the monk's epiphany? Perhaps someone's merriment when you expected solemnity, their casualness amidst your desire for depth, or their joy while you felt the moment called for seriousness, might harbor lessons you have not yet acknowledged. The Buddha conveyed this beautifully, stating, "Thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the light of the candle will not be diminished. Joy does not lessen by being shared." The Master's laughter did not diminish the Dharma, but rather celebrated its boundless joy, a joy the monk came to realize he could share instead of resist. Let us persist in our journey by heeding a cautionary tale concerning the dangers of spiritual arrogance. This is the tale of the clever monkey. In ancient China, the Prince of Wu decided to embark on a leisurely boat ride to the renowned Monkey Mountain, a site famed for its rich wildlife and breathtaking landscapes. Accompanied by a retinue of attendants and guards, the prince approached the mountain with the comfortable assurance of royalty, anticipating that nature would yield to his presence as his subjects did. The moment the monkeys caught sight of the royal procession, they fled in panic. Chattering erupted as numerous monkeys scurried into the highest branches of the trees, their instincts urging them to hide from the encroaching humans. The forest, which moments ago had buzzed with playful monkey sounds, fell silent apart from the rustling leaves as the creatures sought refuge in the canopies. However, one monkey remained unfazed by the royal arrival. This particular primate displayed an audacious fearlessness, continuing his acrobatic feats with exceptional skill and an apparent indifference to the threat below. He swung effortlessly from limb to limb, executing intricate leaps and showcasing his agility as if performing for an audience. His movements were fluid and sure, each act revealing his superior prowess compared to his quivering peers. The Prince of Wu watched this remarkable exhibition with mounting irritation. Here was a mere animal that dared to disregard royal authority, seemingly mocking the very presence of the prince through its unruffled demeanor amid danger. The monkey's confidence appeared to challenge the prince's dominance. Determined to teach this insolent creature a lesson, the prince drew his bow and shot an arrow at the monkey. To everyone's astonishment, the monkey adept caught the arrow mid-flight, snatching it out of the air as effortlessly as one would catch a falling leaf. The creature examined the arrow momentarily, then nonchalantly tossed it aside as if it were mere child's play. The prince's face darkened with fury at this humiliation. His skill as an archer had been overshadowed by an animal. "Seize that arrogant beast," he commanded his guards. "Bring it down." A flurry of arrows filled the air, and the monkey, suddenly faced with a coordinated barrage, was unable to deflect them all. In an instant, he was struck by several arrows and fell lifeless to the forest floor. His remarkable abilities rendered futile against such overwhelming force. The prince then turned to his astute companion, Yen Pua, who had observed the entire scene. The parable of the prince and the monkey. "Do you perceive the lesson here?" inquired the prince. This creature showcased his intellect, believing in his own finesse. He assumed no one could outsmart him. Keep that in your thoughts. When faced with humanity, do not depend solely on your distinction and talent. Yen Pua took this lesson to heart. Upon their return to the kingdom, he pondered if his own achievements and image were fostering a similar hubris that had led to the monkey's downfall. Determined to learn, he became a student of a modest sage. He yearned to shed everything that elevated him above others. He gave up the luxuries that had previously defined his high standing and worked tirelessly to conceal any traits that might separate him from the crowd. Through diligent training, Yen Pua embraced such authentic humility that soon, none in the kingdom could decipher his true nature. He had grown so unremarkable, so unpretentious that people began to sense a profound truth in his very simplicity. They revered him not for outward displays, but for the enigmatic depth they felt beneath his plain facade. Buddha spoke of this when he noted, "Those who know do not speak. Those who speak do not know." This narrative reveals the spiritual peril in allowing our insights or capabilities to form our identities and arouse pride. Why do we feel the need to showcase our spiritual insights or unique attributes? Zen Buddhism exposes how the ego seizes even our most authentic realizations, transforming them into instruments for upholding division and elitism. The very successes that should dissolve the sense of individual self can actually intensify it when we associate our identity with being advanced or enlightened. This story guides us to comprehend how spiritual arrogance manifests. Like the monkey, we may genuinely develop skills through perseverance, deeper tranquility, sharper perception, or enhanced compassion. However, once we start to identify ourselves with these traits, using them to set ourselves apart, they morph into instruments that ultimately lead to our destruction. This timeless wisdom uncovers a paradox at the core of spiritual growth. The further we genuinely advance, the less noticeable that advancement should be. Authentic wisdom inherently manifests as humility because it illuminates the interconnected essence of existence, dissolving any foundation for considering oneself superior. Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki described the concept of don't know mind as the heart of beginner's mind. This is not a state of ignorance, but the wisdom that accepts how superficial our conceptual comprehension is when faced with the mysteries of existence. The monkey's downfall lay in thinking his cleverness set him apart instead of recognizing it as a temporary manifestation of a universal intellect. Buddha taught, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Yen Pua learned that by obscuring his distinctions and becoming unremarkable, he tapped into a deeper type of influence, one that resonated with others through mere presence rather than through performance. Reflect upon your own spiritual path. Are there instances where your insights or talents have led to a subtle form of pride? When moments of meditation, psychological insight, or acts of compassion become means to feel different or superior to others. Each time we cement our practice into our identity, we create the spiritual equivalent of the monkey's hazardous display. As the night unfolds, can you embrace the essence of being no one special? Can you discover the liberation that arises not from showcasing your wisdom, but from simply existing in the ordinary enigma of awareness itself? As the Buddha stated, those who are free from resentful thoughts surely attain peace. The deepest serenity is realized when we relinquish even our attachment to maintaining serenity. As we approach the conclusion of our exploration tonight, take a moment to recognize that the calmness you've unearthed is not something to chase or create. It is inherently present, woven into your essence, patiently awaiting recognition beneath the surface of your daily consciousness. Buddha once remarked, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it outside." This age-old wisdom reminds us that the clarity and calmness you've engaged with this evening are not contingent upon ideal conditions or extraordinary events. Rather, it naturally arises from your capability to be present, to breathe mindfully, and to observe your thoughts without entangling yourself in them. Every narrative shared tonight serves as a gentle nudge to remember what is already embedded deep within you. That contentment flows not from clinging or controlling, but from learning to relinquish gracefully. Genuine joy emerges when we cease battling reality and start to dance with what is. True freedom stems not from altering our external circumstances, but from reshaping our relationship with whatever unfolds before us. Even as your thoughts drift tomorrow, even when old habits of anxiety or restlessness resurface, the insights gathered tonight have already taken root. They've nestled into your consciousness like seeds in fertile soil, poised to bloom whenever nourished by your attention and kindness toward yourself. As you prepare to ease into rest, acknowledge that tonight's teachings highlight a practical way of inhabiting life with more grace and presence, not some far-off philosophy. Sense how your breathing has naturally deepened, how your muscles have relaxed, and how your thoughts have settled into a gentler pace. These timeless truths are not preserved in ancient shrines or hidden away in mystical doctrines. They thrive in the simple act of pausing, breathing, and returning to the present moment. This evening you've rediscovered this reality, a truth that brightens whenever we cease rushing and begin to observe. As you carry this experience into tomorrow and beyond, hold tightly not just to the tales we've shared, but to the deeper awareness they have sparked. That peace is not a destination waiting to be reached, but a way of being. Traveling through life can be likened to embarking on an adventurous voyage. Embrace this awareness as your navigational guide, helping you navigate through serene waters and stormy seas with balanced poise. We appreciate you being a part of this experience wishing you peaceful slumber.